All right. Good evening, everybody. Today is September 15, 2021, and I am calling the City Commission regular meeting to order. Mr. Riley, will you please call the roll, please?
Commissioner Frank O'Donnell.
Here.
Commissioner Denise McGriff.
Present.
Commissioner Rocky Smith.
Here.
Commissioner Adam Marl.
Here.
And Mayor Rachel Lyle Smith.
Here. All right. Will you all please join me and stand for the flag salute? I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. All right, for ceremonies and proclamations, I do have a proclamation for Constitution Week. This is a really short proclamation, but I do think it's really important, so I'm going to read it. Whereas September 17, 2021 marks the 200th and 34th anniversary of the drafting of the Constitution of the United States of America by the Constitutional Convention, and whereas it is fitting and proper to accord official recognition to this magnificent document and the anniversary of its creation, and whereas it is fitting and proper to accord official recognition to the patriotic celebrations which will commemorate the occasion, and whereas Public Law 915 guarantees the issuing of a proclamation each year by the President of the United States of America designating September 17th through the 23rd as Constitution Week. Now, therefore, I, Rachel Lyle Smith, Mayor of City of Oregon City, do proclaim September 17th through the 23rd, 2021 as Constitution Week. We ask all of our Oregon City residents, citizens to reflect on the importance of this document and recognize the significance of this week. In witness whereof I have hereunto set my hand this 15th day of September. I think in light of this past weekend, recognizing the 20th anniversary of the September 11th tragedy, this is also very fitting. I saw lots of patriotic thoughts and lots of thoughts about our nation going up. So Constitution Week. The other proclamation that's not in the agenda is about the Arts Commission. And so I want to start out by saying thanks to staff, Matt Weintraub, who really helped lead us through the collection of applications. And I would like to thank Commissioner Rocky Smith, who helped me last week. We spent 2 evenings last week interviewing quite a number of really stellar Arts Commission candidates. We are excited to be standing up the Arts Commission once again in Oregon City. And so we are, I'm making an appointment for 9 members, and 2 of those citizens are citizens at large. This is following our code. Before I read those names, I want to give Commissioner Smith a chance to make some comments about our eventful last 2 days that we had last week and that process.
Thank you. I guess I will first thank the mayor for allowing me to be a part of that conversation and overhear all of the candidates that applied. And obviously the mayor makes the appointments and didn't have to ask for any other advice, but I'm a founding member of the original Arts Commission, and so I'm glad to be a part of that conversation. I guess what I will say is that I'm so excited, one, that a group of people have stepped up to kind of fulfill a void that we've had for quite some time, and a wide variety of people who have probably right now the same passion that I had for the Arts Commission when I started way back when. The Arts Commission kind of was started under Mayor Williams and continued on with Mayor Norris. So I'm glad to see it back. We have amazing candidates. All the applicants were amazing. And so definitely support their future in creating a vision, and encourage those that were not appointed this evening to apply for future open seats.
All right, thank you for that. And so I want to read off the names and the term lengths. We had to stagger the term lengths because this is a brand-new commission. And so really quickly, Emma Lugo, 1 year. Mary Andrus, 1 year. Josh Planton, 1 year. Jen Woodward, 2 years. Selena Jones, 2 years. Tammy Jo Wilson, 2 years. Karen Burig, 3 years. Tima Carlson, 3 years. And Trieste Andrews, 3 years. So that is our Arts Commission, our brand-new Arts Commission of 9 members. We're really excited. Thank you all for applying. We had, believe it or not, it was a really, really tough decision to pick 9 out of the 13 or 14 that we interviewed. They were all just stellar, and congratulations, and we look forward to working with you and seeing the work that you do. All right, I think that's it for ceremonies and proclamations. So with that, I guess before we get started, can everybody in the back of the room, can you hear me? Could you hear Commissioner Smith from the Zoom? Yes, okay, thank you for that. All right, so our next item is citizen comments. I do have Catherine Piesowitz. You can come on up, say your name and city of residence for the record, and you'll have 3 minutes.
My name is Catherine Pieslowitz. I live in Oregon City, and I will be brief. I just wanted the mayor and commissioners, I want you to know that I have never been so floored at the behavior of some people at the last commission meeting. When the attorney was speaking, I felt that he was making a direct attack upon one of our commissioners, implying that she could not possibly be fair in any of her decision-making. I find that terribly offensive. I also was sitting right next to Mr. Donnelly when he was giving his portion of the Berkley Hills Neighborhood Association appeal. And I not only heard, but I saw our city manager verbally attack him. I actually saw him raise up on his seat like he was getting up, and I honestly thought he was going to get up and physically attack Mr. Donnelly. I could see that Jim was shaken. He was kind of upset, and he really lost track of what he was trying to say and propose. We were only given 15 minutes for our presentation, and I'm afraid that it was terribly disrupted, and we were not able to make our entire appeal because of that behavior. I find this appalling in a public setting. I don't know about you, but I was raised in an environment where everyone had the right to speak and be heard, and everyone was to be treated with respect. So I find that kind of disrespect appalling. I have never in my life thought there was any excuse to be rude. That's all I wanted to comment on. Thank you.
All right, thank you, Ms. Piesowitz. I will say we discussed this item in our executive session. It will be coming back in a public meeting. And that's all I'm going to say about this topic at this time. I don't think we have any other citizen comment. I did get a note that Commissioner Smith was difficult to hear from, I guess, the YouTube or the Zoom. So if you have a way to turn him up or to make sure, I guess Commissioner Smith and Commissioner O'Donnell, please make sure you're speaking up. But we could hear you in the room for sure. All right. So our next item is presentations. We have the Parks and Rec Advisory Committee. We have a PRAC. Who's given the PRAC report? Hello.
Hello. Move these while we talk.
Yes, you can.
Okay.
Make sure you speak into the mic so we can hear you. And state your names also for the record.
I'm Troy Bollinger, and I am the committee chair for Parks and Rec. And this is Sean Dashler, my vice chair. I'm from the McLaughlin neighborhood, and Sean is from Hillendale. And as you have all received our staff report, our staff report for PRAC, I trust that you've all taken the time to read through that. A couple things I wanted to just highlight, rather than cover the entire report that you've seen, is the cost recovery project. This is something that, is citywide, that everyone's had a lot of input in and participation for this project. It's a 5-phased approach, and just a few dates to note is on February 25th, the cohort had their final meeting, and then on April 22nd, they brought to the draft policy to PRAC. We then voted on it and I guess you'd say approved it or endorsed it to be moved on to the commission, and then you all had a chance to look at that. The next thing is our parks. Of course, as Parks and Rec, I got to talk about the parks. We've done a lot of work. I say we, collectively, the entire city of Oregon City has done a lot of work on parks in the last year or so. Most notably, probably, was Tyrone S. Woods Memorial Park. And that as Sean was reminding me earlier tonight, he was serving on PRAC back in 2008 when that property was purchased. So it was a long time coming. Originally, the thought was maybe some ballparks, but in talking with the community and getting some input over time, when we got closer to the park, it was clear that everybody wanted a park. And of course, that honors Tyrone S. Woods, fallen soldier from Oregon City, attended Oregon City High School. So we're very proud of that. It also has a off-leash enclosed dog park, which is very needed and good for the area because of all the development that's taken place out there as well. Then in June of this year, at the grand opening for DC Lotterette, which was not really a new park, but kind of a redone park. And Girl Scouts were very much involved in that. We had a lot of other community members in the neighborhood, a lot of stakeholders that made that come together, which I thought was really, really good, really nice. And currently we are working on a park, not officially, but kind of known as Filbert Run right now. We have a naming committee in place to choose that name, and that survey has gone out to the public already to ask for name suggestions, and then the committee will take those suggestions, narrow it down, and put it to a vote for the final selection. And we anticipate that, let's say it this way, it's construction, so the scheduled move-in date is November of this year. Take it for what it is, with weather permitting and supply chains and things arriving on time. We'll see what happens, but that is currently the move-in date. Those are the two things I wanted to highlight, and we're ready to, Sean's ready to answer questions. I speak, and then he answers all the questions.
Question. Yep. Thank you for that very thorough summary. Yes, I did read the report, and thank you, staff, for helping put that together. I'm just wondering, for the both of you, could you please acknowledge the rest of the members of the PRAC so that the public can know who they are?
You want to do that? You want me to? I'll do it, and then you see if I miss anybody. So there's myself and Sean. Don't ask me when the terms end, though, because we don't have terms. But then we've got Brent Haverkamp. And if you remember what association or what neighborhood they're in, just throw it out.
Names is good.
And then we've got Andy Crump, so that's 4 of us. Karen Morey is 5. And Tim West is 6. And this is public, so now I'm going to get in trouble. No, I'll get it. Who are we missing?
Kendall, can you help?
There we go, Derek Kugel, thank you.
Well, and while he's saying those, we all have to remember that most of us have never met in person, literally. So this committee, has cycled through enough that some of these people we've never physically seen. So it's kind of hard to put faces to names sometimes. When we've literally had Zoom meetings for 18 months.
Well, and to that vein, I had met Kendall but most of members of PrAC had not met Kendall until Tyrone S. Wood's memorial. So, because that was the in-person event, so.
Well,
So yeah, we're
thank
supposed to be a
you.
9-member committee, but theirs was 7. We do have 2 vacancies.
So thank you to you and the other members of the PrAC. If you're listening tonight, thank you on behalf of the commission and the city for your service. We appreciate all of your work, and thank you again.
Thank you.
Any other comments or questions from the commissioners? Seeing none, I think we're good. Thank you.
Thank you to all of you.
Keep up the good work. You're
Thank
doing
you.
great work. All right, so that brings us to the adoption of the agenda. And would anybody like to pull anything from an unusually short consent agenda? Just a note for the city commission, we do have a request for public comment on 7B. So we could only have public comment if that item gets pulled, so that's up to the majority of the commission, what you'd like to do. Or make a motion.
I would be supportive of pulling item 7B. I would like to hear public comment on that.
Okay.
Is that a motion?
No, we just have to agree that. I move that we approve the rest of the consent agenda, item number 7A.
Second.
Right?
Commissioner Frank O'Donnell,
Aye.
Commissioner Denise McGriff,
I can be frank. Aye.
Commissioner Rocky Smith,
Aye.
Commissioner Adam Marl,
Aye.
and Mayor Rachel Lyle Smith.
Aye.
Motion passes.
All right, so just for the public's sake, so our rules of procedures say that, when we pull something from our consent agenda, it goes to general business. So I'll move it to the top of general business. It'll go in front of 9A, so that they don't have to sit through the rest of that if they don't want to. All right. So therefore, moving on in the agenda, we're at our public hearings. We are at 8A. And this is the appeal hearing, AP 21-0004 and AP 21-0005. This is picking up the public hearing. I'll open the public hearing. This is picking up the public hearing from our last meeting, which happened on September 1st. We made it through the majority of the process, so we're going to pick up where we left off. But before we do that, our attorney has to review again the disclosures and conflict of interest and bias statements.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. A public hearing to consider 2 land use appeals relating to a singular decision is scheduled tonight. A staff report has been prepared and has been made available to the public in advance of tonight's hearing. The staff report identifies the applicable approval criteria that apply to each applicant's proposal. Staff has analyzed the criteria along with the appeal documents, written comments, and input received through the public notification process. The quasi-judicial hearing procedure that the commission will follow is set out in state law and the Oregon City Municipal Code. The hearing procedure steps are shown on the chart here, but we're not following that exactly because we've got multiple appellants. We've talked about that. As an appeal hearing, individuals who will be allowed to testify are those who submitted written testimony during staff's review of the proceeding below. Anyone who did submit written testimony who wishes to speak in this appeal should fill out a speaker's card and give it to the planning staff before the hearing. Speakers will proceed in the order in which their card is received. For the public record, please begin all testimony stating your name and whether you reside or have a business within the city. Testimony and evidence should be directed toward the issues raised in the notices of appeal and is limited to the evidence presented to the planning during the planning review below. No new evidence shall be considered on appeal. If you believe other criteria apply in addition to those addressed in the staff report, you must identify and discuss those criteria and explain why you believe they apply to the application under consideration. Any party who submitted written materials below during the proceeding below may submit written materials as part of this review that do not include new evidence while the public record is open. Any qualifying written materials mailed to the city staff during the time period in which the record is open will be placed in the record. With written materials submitted during the public hearing must be presented to city staff with a request that it be presented to the city commission in order to become part of the record. This includes PowerPoint presentations, oversized poster boards, reports, pictures, or other exhibits used in oral testimony. If the commission makes a decision to which you disagree, any issue that you may wish to appeal must have been raised for the commission's consideration without raising the issue on the record with sufficient specificity and accompanied by statements or evidence that the city and all parties, so that the city and all parties can respond, the issue will not be adjudged appealable to the State Land Use Board of Appeals. In addition, Oregon Revised Statute 197796 requires us to announce the following. The failure of an applicant to raise constitutional or other issues relating to proposed conditions of approval with sufficient specificity to allow the local government or its designee to respond to the issue precludes an action for damages in circuit court. You opened the hearing, so at this point, I need to poll the commission and ask you if you have had any ex parte contacts or received any other evidence that was outside the public hearing, such as a site visit since our last meeting, September 1st. We've talked about how this is a quasi-judicial review, meaning that the parties have a right to a decision where the decision makers are unbiased. So I'm going to poll each of you and ask you if you have any ex parte contacts to disclose, bias or conflicts of interest. Have you visited the site? Commissioner Morrow.
No biases, no conflicts of interest. I do drive past that site pretty often, being in the Rivercrest neighborhood, but I have not driven past it solely for a site visit. And then I did bump into Ms. Laws at the last school board meeting, and the only thing I said to her about the matter was that it's going to be an interesting night.
Okay, thank you. Commissioner McGriff.
Yes, I do not have any conflicts of interest. Same as Commissioner Morrow, I drive that street regularly, getting from point A to point B, as I do many of the other streets in Oregon City. And I want to say for the record that involvement in community affairs is part of being a member of the City of Oregon City, at least in my book. Similarly, my involvement with the Rose Farm Management Committee, which manages the William L. Holmes House, does not disqualify me from being fair in this particular hearing. Unfortunately, I did receive the letter from Ms. Forbes rather late in the day, but I did not advise the parent organization that they should testify against the project. That is an error. I was asked whether or not they should express their concerns, and I said, as I've said to any other community member, please make your comments in writing and get them in prior to the time that the final deadline, otherwise they will not be considered. I did not urge them in any way to make a decision. I was not part of any decision making. When I agreed to take this position and was elected to this position, I swore an oath in front of the other city commissioners and the public and former Judge Mayor McNeese, Ms. McNeese, to uphold the laws and ordinances of the City of Oregon City. I have no intention of using any personal experiences with regard to this particular application. It's not going to be part of my decision making, and I can make a decision based solely on the criteria and standards that are set forth in the staff report and based on the testimony that was given in the past and will be given tonight. I have not prejudged any outcome. Many of you know that my professional background is a land use planner. I believe in the statewide land use planning laws, and my decisions are going to be based solely on the criteria and standards set forth in this particular hearing. And I intend to use those in my decision making, and nothing else will be considered with regard to that. And that is my statement for the evening.
Thank you. Commissioner Rocky Smith?
Before I say that, I want to make sure that we are checking the audio. Apparently, people are not hearing those of us at home outside of the commission chambers. I have no conflicts of interest, no bias, no ex parte conversations on this issue. I have driven down Holmes Lane.
Thank you. And Commissioner O'Donnell?
Well, as the video would show, I was not present at the September 1st meeting. However, I did take it upon myself in preparation for this meeting to watch that meeting in its entirety from my home. I did visit the site, driving both Mountain View and Holmes, and driving through the existing apartment complex. I have no bias. I have no ex parte contacts. I intend to remain objective. I have even declined to read any letters that were submitted from those who have no standing. So at this point, I have no conflicts of interest and prepared to proceed.
Commissioner O'Donnell, just to clarify, you said you watched the video and you did not read letters from those who did not have standing, but did you read the rest of the record? You reviewed the rest of the documents that were in the record?
I did. Thank you for your question.
Thank you.
They still can't hear him.
And Mayor Smith?
Yes, I do not have any bias. I have not taken any trips by the site since our last meeting. No conflict of interest. I do think we should address the formal complaints that we received that were related to this appeal, that were sent to all of the city commissioners about staff. I can't say whether or not anybody read them. They were complaint files and they were related to the process. I think most of what was said in those complaints that were verbally here, we talked a lot about that at our last hearing, about talking about the process versus the content of the appeal. And all of that complaint is about process, as far as I know. I didn't read all of the complaints. They all went to a folder, but I just want to acknowledge that formal complaints were sent to us about the process and about this hearing.
Thank you. Does anyone in the audience wish to question the commissioners about these disclosures?
Can you? Yes, please.
Allow me to take off my mask while
Yes.
You have to help me make sure is that okay?
Yep.
Good evening, Mayor, members of the commission. My name is Michael Robinson. My last name is spelled Robinson. My mailing address is 1112 Southwest 5th Avenue, Suite 1900, Portland 97204. So, Mayor, you just talked about complaints that were received. Are those part of this record?
They would not be part of this record because they're a HR complaint against staff. At least that's would be my take on it.
They were not submitted into the record as part of this proceeding.
Okay, and my apology. I think the last thing you need is to make this more legalistic, but let me simply make the statement. If you're going to take a position on something that's not in the record, I think you need to make the documents part of the record, but I'll leave that up to the commission and its attorney to discuss. But I wanted to raise that issue before you went on.
So say that again, if we're going to make a decision that's...
Well, correct me if I was wrong. My understanding was you were going to discuss or act on those complaints in this hearing, or did I misunderstand?
Not in this hearing,
Okay.
no. It's
Okay.
being handled by Human Resources because it's through our formal complaint process with the city.
And may I ask one other question, Mayor?
Sure.
So those complaints have no bearing on the outcome of this hearing, then, is what you're saying?
No,
Okay.
they're about the appeal process that the city has set up.
Okay, thank you so much for letting me ask the question. I appreciate it.
Yeah, no problem. All right. Is that it, Ms. Richter?
That's all I have. Staff does not have a staff report, but we'd be happy to answer any questions. But I think the time is now for testimony from the public.
Okay, and before we get there, so are we still having, I believe we're still having audio issues.
He's working on it.
Yes, we are. And I believe the way that we can resolve that is actually by restarting the system. So if we want to take a brief break while I redo that, or if we want to continue, but apparently it's no one on Zoom is being heard over the stream or over the broadcast.
We need to recess until we can
Yeah,
fix the
I think we
audio.
need to take a break.
Okay, let's take a 5-minute recess and try to get our audio back online, because we probably do have a lot of number of people watching online. So 5-minute break. Progress. All right, so we're back on agenda item 8A. This is the public hearing, continuing from the last meeting. We've done all of our disclosures. And I think we're ready for public testimony, which is where we're picking up. We're going to have individuals. You will be called in the order in which you turned in your card. You will have 3 minutes. These are folks that have standing to appeal. Then after that, we will move to the rebuttal. We will hear from the Berkley Hills Neighborhood Association. They will have 5 minutes after all the individuals, and then we will wrap it up with Mr. Michael Robinson, who is the applicant. He will also have 5 minutes for rebuttal. That's the process that we're going to be going on. So first up, I'll call 2 names so both of you can get ready to come up. Both of you can come up to the 2 stands. We have Nancy Nelson and Timothy Keene. And just state your name and the city of residence for the record. That's all we need.
Hi, I'm Nancy Nelson, and I'm a resident of Oregon City. I'm also a professional archaeologist, and the location of the proposed condominium is an area of very high concern. My property that is just east of Lynn Avenue is within the William Holmes donation land claim. And so, as we know, Rose Farm is where he and his family lived. And so I would highly recommend that the project area is tested. Presence and absence testing would be a good start. Ground penetrating radar would also help indicate any unmarked graves. So there is a reason why he settled there, and it's probably because indigenous people were probably there too. So those investigations would help identify if there are any pre-contact archaeological sites. Another concern of mine is that this is the headwaters, the aquifer to Singer Creek. And the research that I've done tells me that the natural resource overlay is over 20 years old. And I'm not sure if it really has the data that can tell us if our changing climate was included in that analysis. And our water, our city water, is so precious that I'd really like to encourage the city to look at that again and make sure that the engineers have the best data possible to design their condominium and to create their stormwater basin. And lastly is the traffic study. My review of that shows that it was going to Malala only, like people would be coming out of the condominium unit and they would take a left onto Holmes and go over to Malala to go down to I-205. And the way I usually drive is I would take a right onto Holmes and I go straight to Lynn Avenue, and I live off of Lynn Avenue. And when I'm trying to get out of my little cul-de-sac, it is so dangerous to take a left or a right trying to get onto Lynn Avenue. And so I'd like the city to take a look at what the impacts will be to that part of our city and the needs for maybe new traffic lights, new sidewalks, because I really want Oregon City to be a livable city, and having that many more people living in our community, I think Lynn Avenue will be impacted. So thank you.
Thank you. All right, Mr. Timothy King.
Hi, good evening. My name is Timothy Keene. I'm a resident of Oregon City. I live on Mountain View. My wife also has a licensed in-home daycare that we run out of our home on Mountain View. My primary reason for being here, as well as the reason that I wrote the letter as a public comment, has to do with, this is called the Mountain View Townhomes, and yet Mountain View as a street has been getting very little attention as far as the traffic study, and a lot of kind of the concern when it comes to traffic. Mountain View is a very thin street. In fact, that is mentioned several times in the traffic study, and yet the traffic study only really looked at Holmes Lane, and specifically where Holmes Lane connects with Malala and the Holmes Lane of Rylands Lane. Mountain View has no stoplight where it connects with Malala. As we know, Malala is, one of the most busy streets in this entire city. And if you ever try to turn off of Mountain View to get onto Malala, really either way, left especially, it's incredibly difficult. And this traffic study makes a point of saying that they just assumed that everybody is going to be driving on Holmes, and mentioned several times, well, because Mountain View is not very navigable. It's thin. The structure of it is not great, and so therefore, most people are just going to use Holmes. But the reality is, if you're coming up Malala, and you live in this complex, and you can either turn right down Mountain View to get to your home, or continue being stuck in traffic and going to Holmes and then turning right, you're going to go down Mountain View. And the fact that there are, at this point, really no improvements planned there, there's not a stoplight being planned there. The actual area just past the park where this is going to be going in basically goes down to a one-lane street. And if you then pile up cars in that parking lot, as well as the very limited parking across the street, which right now has no sidewalk, it's just homes and a couple large trees that are going to therefore make parking even more difficult and thin the street even further. To then add a lot more cars going back and forth there, it makes me very concerned as far as safety for my neighbors, for the families that we work with, and for my own kids. And before this gets approved, I really want to encourage the commission. I don't legitimately know exactly if this is possible or not, but looking at potentially a new traffic study of that area, specifically looking at Mountain View and Malala, and determining whether or not it would make sense for this complex to be going in, adding that many more cars, adding that much more traffic to an area that really has not had a significant look as far as if it could handle it. Thank you.
All right, thank you. All right, next I believe this says Mark Beds, or Beals, maybe Beals. Come on down, Mark, and then Deanne. Oh, that one, I can read that one a little bit better. Deanne Beals, I think it says Beals.
Yeah, my name is Mark Beals. I do live in Oregon City. I'm just going to read what I have my thoughts, and there's handouts that you should have that correlate with what I'm going to read.
Mark, could you move the mic so it's like right in front of your face?
Right in front of my face.
Yep.
There you go.
There you go. Thank you.
Okay. Can you hear me? Okay. The proposed development would add 180 toilets, 300 sinks, 180 tubs and or showers, 60 dishwashers to the existing sewer and water lines. If you look at handout A, this came with last month's water bill, asking Oregon City voters and taxpayers to pass a ballot measure to raise our water bill to pay for replacing old water lines in the old neighborhoods. Clearly, there are signs that existing water lines are failing under their current demand. If you look at the handout B, this is a page from Oregon City Trail News. It's a map of where Oregon where Public Works are going to be fixing and or replacing sewage lines on Holmes Lane, west of Lynn Avenue. Again, clearly the existing sewage lines are starting to fail with the current demands that are on them. The new development would also add a minimum of 120 cars to the streets of Holmes Lane and Mountain View Street via the continuation of Raylance Lane through the proposed development. If you look at handout C, this is a plot plan of the proposed development with the continuation of Raylance through the proposed development. That would be creating a four-way intersection on Holmes and a three-way intersection on Mountain View. If you look at the handout D, this is page 2 out of the type 2 staff report and notice of decision with conditions of approval dated July 22nd, 2021. The highlighted lines 5 and 8 explain how those intersections will be developed. The proposed continuation of Raylance Lane, starting at Holmes, going towards Mountain View, has a 3 to 4 foot drop in elevation, and in a flood-producing weather event, it could possibly produce enough stormwater to flood the existing houses on Mountain View. If you look at handout E, this is page 29 from the same staff report dated July 22nd, 2021. Please look at the highlighted line, and it says connection to the public water storm conveyance system is required to service this development. Currently, there is not a stormwater conveyance system on that end of Mountain View Street adjacent to the proposed development. If you look at handout F, the photo number 1 is showing where the existing sidewalk ends at the east side of the park looking west. The photo 2 is showing where the proposed sidewalk would approximately end on the west side of the park looking east. The photo 3 is showing where the closest stormwater connection is to the development on Mountain View Street looking west towards the proposed development. Photo 4 is showing the abrupt drop-off at the end of the sidewalk on the east side of the park. The underlying problem, I believe, is the R2 zoning. It's too dense for this old of a neighborhood and aging infrastructure. In closing, I request that 2 more conditions of approval be added for pedestrian safety. Number 1 is the proposed 4-way intersection on Holmes Lane be changed from a 2-way stop to a 4-way stop.
Mr. Beals,
Yes.
I'm sorry to interrupt you, but you're way over on your time. I'm sorry. Yeah, you only have 3 minutes. I would have stopped you before, but I was looking through all of your exhibits. Thank you.
Excuse me. Can I ask Mr. Beals a question?
Sure.
Mr. Beals, exhibits A, B, C, and the photos, are they in the record already? Or are they newly submitted?
They're newly submitted, I guess.
So this is new evidence and facts? Thank you.
I would presume so. Anything else, Ms. Richter?
No,
Okay.
thank you.
Thank you. All right, go ahead.
My name is Deanne Beals. We've lived in Oregon City since 1990 and on Holmes Lane since 1992, just 2 doors up from the proposed 60 condos. We love our home and our community, and that's why I'm speaking now with significant concerns. The traffic survey we were given, done in September of 2017, is too old and does not reflect on our Holmes Lane today, especially since the opening of the new police department and building department here on Lynn Avenue. We were told recently by an Oregon City officer that the police department travels on Holmes Lane more than Warner Milner to get to Malala. Also, since Gardner Middle School opened this week, we're getting more traffic and school buses using our Holmes Lane Street. As of Monday of this week, I see children walking and riding their bikes getting to and from the middle school. Again, shows that we need a current survey on Holmes Lane. Since 2 years ago when I retired, I spend most of my time at home now. I see speeders every single day on Holmes Lane, plus an increase of cars, trucks like Amazon many times of the day, police cars, let alone bicycle riders, children with their parents walking their dogs on Holmes Lane with only one sidewalk on one side and no crosswalks on Holmes Lane. There was no traffic survey done in Mountain View, which is a one-lane street. No consideration for additional cars, Amazon buses, Amazon vans, school buses on Mountain View, let alone the three-way street of Raylance if it was to connect to Mountain View. This brings up more safety and traffic issues. Coming out of our driveway onto Holmes Lane, looking west to Lynn Avenue, we cannot see traffic beyond Jim's home. He's right next to us, because it dips down to Raylance. It's a risk just turning out of our driveway. It doesn't matter which way we turn, right or left. We have lived next to the Tucson Villa Apartments for 29 years. It's only a 2-story high apartment complex, but I can't count how many times we've had to call police or fire department for domestic violence, trash thrown over our home, fireworks off their decks to our home, cigarette butts and marijuana debris, and many changes of ownership of the apartments to deal with. And that's only 8 units next to our home. What will it be like for the 60 condos next to Jim Donnelly and our other neighbors on Mountain View, Bell Court, and the homes facing directly in front of the condos on Holmes Lane? Seriously, shouldn't these safety issues be addressed before building 60 condos? Shouldn't our infrastructure for our sewer system and lack of city sewer at the end of Mountain View be addressed before considering 60 condos? These properties should be used for affordable housing that would fit our older neighborhood. From our eyes and the eyes of our neighborhoods and our friends, we see that it's the R2 zoning that isn't right for our neighborhood. Thank you.
Thank you. All right, so I believe that's all of our individuals for testimony. And we will move on. I assume Ms. Richter and Ms. Turway, we're going to handle all the exclusions of things we're not supposed to take into consideration at the end, right? Okay. All right, so we're going to move on to the appellant, the Barkley Hills Neighborhood Association. You're welcome to speak however you'd like with your 5 minutes. I have Carla Laws, Catherine Piesowitz, and James Donnelly. Yeah, you can submit a new form. What's your name? Terry Lingman. So you do have standing to appeal.
I don't, I'll have to check the list. I'm sorry, what's his name?
He's on my list of Terry Lingman.
Okay.
He has standing to appeal. You can fill out if you could fill out a card when you're done, but come on down. Yeah, staff can help you with the form. Come on down, and then you have 3 minutes.
My name is Terry Lingman, and we live on 602 Holmes Lane. My wife is a piano teacher with 30 to 40 students who come and go once a week, so we have lots of comings and goings at our house. Holmes Lane has always been busy, and it's more and more busy all the time. Specifically after this facility was added, and also the pizza place around the corner, Amazon vehicles going back and forth, and also the Oregon City equipment yard is between Molalla and the new development. So they have not only pickups, but they also have larger trucks with trailers, pulling equipment, and they go in and out of that facility frequently. So I would like to address the safety concerns on Holmes Lane. Here are the significant factors that create bad traffic situations. Grocery outlet received deliveries from 18-wheeler semi-trucks, 2 to 4 trucks per day. The Oregon City Public Works, which I mentioned. When Gardner Middle School is open, many vehicles travel Holmes Lane to drop off and pick up students. Please realize that bad traffic situations are a prelude to pedestrian incidents that result in seriously bodily injury to the pedestrian victim. This project, the 60-unit condominiums, will more than double the auto traffic between the project and Malala Avenue. The transportation impact analysis prepared by Global Transportation Engineering appears to be flawed, specifically with respect to parking provisions for the new condominium residents. This project, with blatantly inadequate parking provisions for the apartment tenants, will create a parking nightmare for the residents of neighboring streets on Reliance Avenue, Mountain View Street, Bell Court, Haley Court, and on Holmes Lane itself. With double the pedestrian traffic and double the automobile traffic on Holmes Lane, this project will create a permanent community safety problem. And then I also like to say just a word about the historic district and the Rose Farm. This project flies in the face of preserving a unique Rose Farm historical district. Yes, as a gaudy, massive condominium complex, it will be a blight to the historic district, and further, it will draw untold vagrants to overrun and destroy the Stafford City Park at the steps of one of Oregon City's prime historic districts, the Holmes Lane Rose Farm. Based on grounds of public safety, the destruction of the Rose Farm Historic Appeal, and the creation of a parking nightmare in the Holmes Lane community, I request that the Oregon City Council discontinue support of this project and reject it outright for the benefit of the Oregon City community. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Lingman. All right. Any other public comment? Folks, I see no one raising their hands. So, all right. So we're back to the Neighborhood Association. Mr. Donnelly, Ms. Piesowitz, and Ms. Laws. You'll have 5 minutes for rebuttal.
Barkley Hills Neighborhood Association did a meeting last night and requested that I particularly, on top of us for rebuttal, would be able to speak for 5 minutes for Barkley Hills Neighborhood Association on top of Jim Donnelly was interrupted last time, where I felt like it took him off caliber from what I witnessed, and I'm hoping we could have a little bit more time than 5 minutes. His interruption, he was probably about 5 minutes in of his 15 minutes, so really kind of in a sense, he lost his ability to say a lot of information. So I'm requesting, can we have more time than 5 minutes?
Well, because you're the appellant, you were allowed 15 minutes at the beginning of all of the testimony. And so therefore, that was the Neighborhood Association's time in order to provide public testimony. This is your rebuttal session.
I do feel that Jim Donnelly was interrupted, and I did additionally had a vote through my neighborhood association, which was voted on last night, and will have the minutes for it, that I could speak 5 minutes for the neighborhood, and I was trying not to interrupt residents who felt that they were interrupted during their 15 minutes. So I'm hoping and begging for some more time.
I will give you 1 extra minute. You can go to 6 minutes. I also interrupted you in your 15-minute testimony time, if you'll recall, in the very beginning, requiring you to stay on topic. So that is fairly normal. Our attorneys can interrupt you. I can interrupt you. I'm willing to give you a little bit of lenience, but because you had a meeting last night doesn't come into play, I will also give the appellants an extra minute they will have 6 minutes as well, just to be fair.
Do we each get 5 minutes?
No, you do not.
You do not.
The Barkley Hills Neighborhood Association will get 6 minutes
Okay.
total.
So what I'm going to do is I'm talking for Barkley Hills Neighborhood Association, and I am the chair. And what we're talking about is basically our due process was also belittled not only by the developer attorney, but also our city attorney, in my opinion. And there's ORS 227180, 1A. A party aggrieved by the action of the hearings officer may appeal that action to the planning commission or council of the city, or both. However, the council prescribes the appellate authority on its own motion may be reviewed by action. So what I'm asking for is this doesn't just affect Barkley Hills. It affects Rivercrest because of Belcourt. This affects all of McLaughlin because 2/3 of the pipe, Singer Creek is put through pipes and there's grates. And I spoke to a particular person that those grates have to be cleaned out up to twice a day. We also have it to where Environmental Learning Center had mentioned that it's a unique body of water and that it needs to be protected and that they're very concerned about the sedimentation. So what I'm requesting is that you as the council representing not only Barkley Hills, because Rivercrest didn't have an opportunity and neither did McLaughlin, that you guys make your decision on this for the neighborhood association, because otherwise LUBA is going to come into action. Thank you.
I request a timeout so I can approach the bench and I have historic data. So you can follow along with the pictures that I've included?
And this is in your notice of appeal?
This is part of the appeal, yes.
So these are documents that you already have in the notice of appeal, so.
Are they documents that you provided to us before?
These are new documents I'm presenting today that have direct correlation with what we're talking about.
The record is closed to new evidence, so no new facts can be submitted.
Okay. It has come to my attention as of the last, I'm James Donnelly, Oregon City resident for 27 years. It has come to our attention as of the last hearing of some changes. And those changes deal with, it's right here on the cover sheet of the packet that we got, the request by the developer is to approve the site design review and lot line adjustment for a 60-unit residential condominium project. Let me read you what a definition of a condominium is. It's owned. It is owned by it is owner occupied. It is not an apartment. It came to our attention that their intent is to build apartments. And we had a meeting last November, November 10th, 2020. We spoke to the developer. I directly asked the developer, are these going to be condos or apartments? His reply was condos. I asked how much you were going to sell them for. He said around $400,000. So what he's requesting should be null and void. This is he's not requesting to build apartments. He's requesting to build 60 condominium projects. So 60 unit condominium project. And then moving on, if they're going to be apartments, a good example of a badly run apartment building is right next door to Mark and Deanne Beals. And there is a through road through their parking lot that they had to install. It's called the Tuscany Villa. It's at 581 Holmes Lane. They had to install speed bumps to prevent traffic from driving through at high speeds, cutting in from Mountain View Street to Holmes Lane and vice versa. This unnamed parking street connects Holmes Lane to Mountain View. Here is their garbage situation in the back. I don't know if anybody can see that. There's couches and mattresses and there's rats living in them. The garbage stinks. Somebody changed their motor oil and dumped it right outside on the ground. There is no owner pride at this apartment complex. I went to Mountain View and parked. There is no parking signs here. Someone drove through these two parked cars. I had them stop and I measured, it's less than 6 feet. This is just before a blind spot where the, I apologize, sir. Can you stop my time, please?
No, you can't. Time out, everybody please stop talking. Ms. Richter, I believe you are going over and you're trying to give us new testimony at this point in time by holding up your pictures and the stuff that we just asked you not to continue. You can continue your testimony, Mr. Donnelly.
Okay.
I believe this would address your procedure issue.
Wow, you said exactly what I was going to say. What I also wanted to say is simply not that you can't. It's new evidence, and that's what I heard a moment ago. Not only may you not.
Please come to the mic.
Yes, could we have you, could you please approach one of the mics?
Yes.
Start over.
Mayor, thank you for your courtesy. Michael Robinson on behalf of the applicant. Thank you for what I was going to say. I was going to say two things. You said the first, and the second I was going to say is, in addition to not showing the documents, which are new evidence, you also cannot refer to them. The record of the city attorney is closed. So that was my procedural objection. Thank you for your courtesy.
What are we doing?
He is correct. So I am going to ask you to try not to talk about the stuff that you're trying to present new evidence that's not allowed to be presented.
Can I talk about the traffic problems on Mountain View?
Oh, Jim,
Yes.
can I talk? Very covered traffic.
Real quickly, let me summarize. Mountain View is too small. It's 18 feet wide. The parking structure or the parking lot at Stafford Park, when people pull in and park, it sticks out right where the new intersection is going to be, where the new Rylance is going to meet the end of Mountain View. That's just under 18 feet wide, and people are allowed to park in the parking lot. They're allowed to park on the right-hand side. There isn't going to be enough room for people to safely pass each other. Again, it's the same problem with line of sight and blind spots. The other problem is on Holmes Lane. There is a huge dip that goes from about my property at 567 and it drops down all the way to Rylance. When you are approaching that dip, you can't see a car, you can't see a person walking, you can't see anybody riding a bike. Speeding is a huge problem on that street. We've got a new guy that's riding a motorcycle doing 80 twice a day. And it's the same thing with the new approach from the new Rylance to Holmes Lane. As someone else stated, nobody's going to make a right turn and go down Lynn. So that's a very busy intersection. Lynn's a very busy intersection with a red flashing light. It's a four-way stop. And I have personally seen 2 accidents that have happened right in front of me. And also on the old Rylance, on the first corner, there is not enough room for 2 cars to pass. If the parking overflows from the new apartments to people that are just going to go across and park at the old Rylance right in front of the Rose Farm Museum.
Mr. Donnelly, you're out of time. I do have a question for you, so don't leave yet. Do any of the city commissioners have any questions for them before they leave? I have one question about you held up a piece of paper and said that it was a notice that said that condos were going to be built versus apartments.
Yes.
Do you know which I'm looking through the exhibits and I'm trying to find the exhibit.
It's the cover sheet that was on our packet. And right here where it says file number, applicant, owners, request. It's the first, it's right in the middle. The request clearly states for a 60-unit residential condominium project.
Okay. Ms. Turway, do you know exactly which document he's referring to? I believe 1 second.
I've got a copy of the city record. It was in the planning department file. It says land use application form on it. Actually, it says 59 unit condominium development. And it's right here. And the applicant is Emiro Design LLC. And the signature on it is Steve Miller. This is out of the planning department's files for this particular development.
Okay, thank you.
We really have no idea who actually is the actual one. I don't understand.
You're out of time for your testimony. I'm sorry. I'm trying to really run this as closely to the rules as I can. All right, so the appellant, Michael Robinson, and I don't know if you have any other staff that you would like to bring up with you. Okay. As I mentioned earlier, you'll have 6 minutes. We can't hear you. Can you make sure? Is the green light on?
There we go. Thank you so much.
There you go.
Thank you. Good evening, Mayor Lyle Smith, members of the commission. My name is Michael Robinson. My last name is spelled R-O-B-I-N-S-O-N. My mailing address is 1211 Southwest 5th Avenue, Suite 1900, Portland, Oregon 97204. I'm here tonight on behalf of the applicant. So let me, if I could, just state a couple of things. And I think Ms. Richter, your city attorney, covered this. While I appreciate Mr. Beal's testimony, handout items A, B, and then the last one, which I think is F, are new evidence and therefore outside of the record. Also, we heard some additional, probably what is new evidence. I'm going to leave that up to the city attorney and the city commission to deal with. And I appreciate the diligence with which you've tried to regulate all of us in terms of the testimony, and thank you for your courtesy in allowing me to make my procedural objection. Let me talk about just very quickly about the condominium issue. Cities don't regulate ownership types. Condominiums are regulated by the state of Oregon, and my understanding is that the city, and if you look at page 2 of the September 15th, 2021 staff report at the top, it says all of the units are proposed on one lot, so it was reviewed for compliance with applicable multifamily design standards. So whether you call it a condominium or apartment, the city regulates multifamily units. Those are the approval criteria that the applicant was subject to and that they addressed through substantial evidence. So I appreciate that it might have caused some confusion. I don't think it's relevant to a substantial issue in the hearing tonight. So I don't want to use all of my 6 minutes. I think you've probably heard enough over 2 nights, so I'm going to try and be as brief as possible. First of all, applicant waives final written argument under ORS 197-763 6E once the record is closed to all other parties. So you can deliberate tonight if you wish. We didn't want to make you go to the trouble of having to schedule a special meeting, so we're going to waive final written argument. Secondly, I want to emphasize something, and this may be, well, we're obligated to raise issues under your own rules and under state law regarding deficiencies and appeals. It doesn't give us any pleasure to say that a neighborhood association, in our opinion, failed to properly file an appeal. We believe in Goal 1, we believe in citizens' rights to talk subject to the rules that govern these hearings. But the reason we filed the appeal, Mayor Lyle Smith, is because in our opinion, it was jurisdictionally deficient, and your code requires a jurisdictionally valid appeal. So it wasn't meant to cut off citizen participation. We respect citizen participation. I was on vacation at the first hearing, but I watched the hearing. It's evident that a lot of people are passionate about this, and they put a lot of time into it, and we respect that. But that's separate and apart from the legal issue and the legal proceeding that this appeal is. So I hope that not everyone may accept that, and I appreciate that, but I hope at least the city commission understands why we raised those issues, and that's why we did that. Secondly, I understand your ruling in the first commission that the first hearing that the BHA and appeal was appropriate to go forward. All I would say is you've got our argument. We ask you to consider that. Thirdly, we ask you to reject the appeal of the director's decision approving the application. The director correctly found that all of the relevant criteria, those that are clear and objective, were satisfied by substantial evidence that the applicant submitted. And this includes the traffic analysis. There's only one professional traffic report in the record, and that's the one prepared by the applicant because we had to meet that burden of proof. But you have a very competent traffic engineer, John Replinger, who reviewed not only our traffic study, but the public comments regarding traffic made in the record. And John's reports are at, his analysis of our study is at record page 808. His analysis of the public comments on traffic are at packet page 812. He found in all respects that the applicant's traffic study had satisfied the relevant approval criteria, and the commission can find the same thing. There's simply no contrary evidence. The last issue before the commission in its decision-making is whether to approve this application with the 5 modified conditions so that they become clear and objective, and delete condition 3. Condition 3 is the only reason we filed an appeal, and that's the appeal of the dedication and improvement requirements on the lot that remains a single-family lot. And you've heard a lot of argument about that. Mayor, I just have 2 points to make. First is there's just simply no factual or legal connection between the lot with that remaining single-family dwelling on it and the adjacent lot. In other words, there's no basis for imposing a condition of approval requiring dedication and improvements on a lot that's going to continue to be used for single-family homes. Remember, if and when it's developed, you can legitimately require those improvements. The second point is there's simply no impact from that lot with a single-family home that justifies the condition. So again, you've had a significant amount of briefing. I don't think I need to add to it. I'd only close by saying this applicant has done everything they're required to do under local and Oregon law to demonstrate that the approval criteria are met. This is a needed housing application. It's subject only to clear and objective approval standards. And I think what the commission said at the outset of the hearing is important. Your job, and I think Commissioner McGriff said it well, your job is to make a decision based on the approval criteria, not how favorable the applicant is or not how well liked we are. And if you do that, as is your job, then you can conclude based on the evidence in the record that we've met our burden. You should reject the BHNA appeal, and we ask that you also delete condition 3 if you approve this application. With that, I'll close. I appreciate your time tonight, and again, thank you for allowing me to make that brief procedural objection. I didn't want to gum up the works anymore, but I felt it was necessary. Thank you. You're welcome.
Mayor Smith, could I make a point of, not procedure, but a point of just correction for the audience? So just for everybody's information, it's pronounced Rylance. It looks like Reliance, but it's Rylance. Former mayor, et cetera, in the city.
Thank you, Mayor. You're welcome.
All right. Ms. Richter, I believe we need to hear from you.
Yes.
Oh, I thought you were going to go over the exclusions and all that at this point.
Well, at this point, I think that the question for you all is to close the public hearing, public portion of the hearing, close the record.
Right.
The record's already closed. Close the public testimony portion of this hearing and deliberate. And tonight, we're hoping that the commission will make a tentative decision. That motion will include a statement about rejecting testimony from those who have no standing and new evidence. And because a number of documents came in today and tonight, when we return with findings, we will have that list. And as part of your motion to adopt the findings consistent with this tentative decision, it will all be laid out in black and white. It would be much easier than us scrambling up here to try to do that on the fly with your permission.
All right. That sounds like a good plan. All right. With that, the public hearing is now closed, and we are going to move on in the process. Questions of staff and deliberation? Commissioner McGriff?
Yes, thank you, Mayor Lyle Smith. Staff, where are we on the 120 days specifically?
The 120 is October 11th.
Okay, and that is,
So we have enough time to make a tentative decision tonight and then come back at the first October meeting with the final decision, with the new findings.
And then it would be mailed the next day, the 7th or 8th, in advance of the 11th being the deadline.
well, the reason I'm asking the question is there's several things in the staff report that I don't understand because it's just saying it refers to something else which is not in the report. So for example, just on page 32 of the staff report, it refers to like maintenance of public stormwater facilities. It says, see findings from section 175141 regarding warranty of public improvements. So it's not really laid out here, which means I have to go look in 141 to figure out what that is.
We'd be happy to answer your questions this evening.
Yeah, the question is, I don't know what it is, and it's hard for me to understand since I'm not a stormwater person. There's a number of those in this report that are confusing to me because of referring to something that's not listed out. So I want to make sure our findings are rock solid. And if we made a finding that refers to something else that's not listed, how can we make a finding about it?
What I would recommend is that you ask questions with respect to those things, remembering that, you know, we're limited to items raised in a notice of appeal. I appreciate that stormwater was raised, but I'm not sure if it was raised in the context with the specificity that you're talking about, Commissioner McGriff.
Okay.
But I would be happy when we return with revised findings to remove those cross-references. We have no more evidence, so I'm not sure if you have questions or if you think that one of the findings just aren't explained enough.
It probably not, because it's saying that, I mean, maybe, I don't know, like I said, I've gone through this like 4 or 5 times already, and I said, okay, so if this refers to something to do with a warranty period, why didn't the findings say that they will sign a warranty thing or whatever, rather than referring to something else? Because I spent a lot of time with the code trying to go back and forth, looking stuff up to figure out how it met the finding. And that's really hard to do when it's online. Trying to understand comprehensively how that did that. And I know I looked at those conditions. I did raise a question with staff because it was part of the public record regarding some items that were required on the initial site plan. And I was told by staff that it wasn't relevant, but the code says shall, and that means something to me.
Commissioner
I'm just trying to go through all of the findings to make sure that everything is rock solid. This is why I asked about the 120 days, because
Commissioner McGriff,
I'm confused.
can you hear me?
I can.
I didn't get the code section that you were concerned about.
I just use that as an example. There are many of those references throughout this report that refer to something else, but not with any specificity.
Because many times those staff reports do refer to the code because it's got so much description in it. So erosion control, for instance, this developer is going to be required to meet the erosion control standard in our code section. So rather than describe all those steps, we often in the staff report refer to that code section. So I'm not sure if...
Yeah, I wasn't suggesting you describe all the steps. I was just suggesting that maybe the findings should have been a little clearer as to how that was going to be met with another sentence of something sort. So I mean, like I said, this is a very detailed, comprehensive report, and there's a lot here. And like I said, I've gone over it 3 or 4 times, but every time I read it again, I find something else.
All right. Any questions? I'm happy to run down my short list. I don't see any other hands raised, so I'm just going to start. So some of the things that came up tonight, and I think they were probably addressed in the last meeting with Ms. Turway's presentation, but just because that was a couple weeks ago, we should probably review it. The parking issues, my understanding, or parking concerns, I believe the applicant just has to meet the minimum parking requirements based on the number of spaces requirements in our code, and that the applicant has done that. Whether or not we agree with that number of parking spots, that is the case, correct? Correct. Okay. For Mountain View Road, what just happened?
I don't know. I think we got a recording.
Looks like, do we have our audio? You hit a button.
I think it's working now, but that's a new one.
Yeah. Okay. So, all right. So Mountain View Road, it is a very narrow road. If I recall, I haven't been on there in a while, but I heard the public testimony, and I remember that it does narrow going down the further you go down the road. So maybe this is a question for Mr. Lewis. I don't recall, is there no parking signs along there? Is that something that could be put in place later if it became problematic, or?
I don't recall if there's no parking signs, but if we needed no parking signs, we could add them. I'll look real quick though too.
And John Replinger and Associates, our transportation engineers, here to answer any questions about the traffic study as well.
Yeah, I don't know if the traffic study addressed the narrowness of Mountain View and how that came into play into the traffic study. It sounded like Holmes Lane was the focus, and I guess it seems like I want everybody to remember, including us, and maybe for me too, like this is step one in the process, and there's going to be quite a number of things that are happen along the way if this development moves forward. They will have to meet all the parking standards. Are there additional traffic studies or anything regarding Mountain View that the developer will have to do that they haven't done right now that would address some of these concerns?
I would request that John Replinger come up and speak, because there was some reference and analysis of Mountain View in the traffic study.
Laura, you're going to have to take your mask off, because I could not even totally understand that.
Sorry. I was requesting if it would appease the commission, that John Replinger and Associates come up and talk about the traffic study. He's our he's our transportation consultant that we use to analyze the traffic study. And so there was some discussion about Mountain View in the traffic study, and so he can talk about some of that in detail.
It's pretty minimal.
Okay.
Yeah, John Replinger, city consulting traffic engineer. The traffic study did assign most of the traffic, all of the traffic, to Holmes Lane for a variety of reasons, including the ability of people to access the traffic signal at Malala Street. In part, making that assumption put the maximum amount of traffic at the intersection that would be analyzed as part of the traffic impact analysis. The guidelines for traffic impact studies requires the applicant to assess the traffic operations at intersections which are impacted by 20 or more vehicles during the peak hour. So that left the Malala and Holmes as the one that was required to be evaluated in the traffic impact study. Also, the site access location at Holmes and Rylands. I did address the impact on Mountain View Street in my analysis letter that's part of the record. I'll read part of that to you. I said, for traffic going to and from the north on Malala Avenue, Holmes Lane will be an attractive route for use by residents of the development. The presence of a traffic signal at Holmes Lane and Malala will make it easy to make left turns onto northbound Malala Avenue from the development. Additionally, the narrowness of Mountain View Street will help reinforce low travel speeds on Mountain View Street. This, in turn, will cause some residents to prefer Holmes Lane to Mountain View Street for access to the development. Mountain View Street can accommodate additional traffic from the development without significant impact on safety. So that was part of my analysis based upon my review of the traffic impact analysis performed by the applicant's engineer.
And are there any transportation, traffic, parking analysis or steps that the applicant will have to go through later in the process when this moves on through the land use process?
The only thing would be an assessment of the, to assure that site distance at the access points meets the city standards. There are certain things that cannot be done in anticipation of development when there's vegetation and stuff that will be removed during the construction process.
Gotcha. And the site analysis, the site distance analysis really only has to be performed from this is a question, does it have to be performed only from the entry and exit point from the development? So if neighbors, for example, were 2 doors down and they may have obstructions from, I don't know, I'm making this up, signs or bushes or whatever, your analysis would only address the entry and leaving points from the development, not necessarily a block away or 2 blocks away?
That's correct.
Real quick, just looking at Google Maps here, at least the last version of maps that I see from 2019 don't show, we don't have any no parking signs on Mountain View. Could they be added? Sure.
Is there any parking or anything included on Mountain View? Was that part of the parking requirements, or all of the on-street parking on homes or inside the development?
The parking can be accommodated all on site, not utilizing any on-street parking.
Okay. Okay.
In a portion of the property abutting Mountain View.
For parking, the applicant.
No, I'm not talking about parking, just is any portion of the property abutting Mountain View Street.
Yes, there is a portion of the property abutting Mountain View Street.
Okay, so ergo, then my question is, if a portion of the property is abutting Mountain View Street, why did we not require any minimal improvements on that right-of-way? Because I presume Mr. Lewis is Mountain View a 60-foot right-of-way technically on paper, but not in reality?
I can measure it. It does get narrow down there, so maybe John knows the width of the right-of-way there, but I can measure it real quick for you.
I don't know what it is, I just...
So the plans that I've seen have improvements on Mountain View Street for the frontage improvements. So there's not necessarily much in the way of off-site improvements, but all of their frontage along Mountain View includes frontage improvements on their side of the road.
We do have
includes a curb?
Curbs and...
Can we bring up the site plan that the applicant submitted? I believe it shows what the improvements are.
Sure, that would be helpful.
That located as an exhibit in this agenda item?
It was in the PowerPoint.
In their PowerPoint?
That I had emailed to you this evening.
It's been at the last meeting, correct?
Trying to find it.
Or tonight.
It looks to me like the right-of-way width, and these aren't accurate measurements. Keep in mind, we're using an IC map here, but looks like...
I don't think it's in the record. Let's just
I don't think it is either, but that other one is helpful.
Yep, this is it. So there we go. And then, so towards the top of the screen, you can zoom in. And then John, is Josh on the line as well?
I can't tell if he's on the line, but he was going to be on the line. Tell if Josh Wheeler's on the line.
All right, so the site map is showing the improvements on Mountain View that we can see clearly in this drawing.
That's the extent of the frontage on Mountain View. You notice it doesn't go fully across the property.
While he's fiddling with that, because, yeah, okay.
All right, are there any other questions about transportation?
Could you put, it still didn't answer my question, I'm sorry. It just went off so fast. It looked like it was a curb kind of going like this. Is that what I saw?
So the Mountain View right-of-way ends near where, those curb returns are at. So Mountain View right-of-way doesn't go all the way through. So they're doing frontage improvements along their frontage of the Mountain View existing right-of-way.
So am I looking at a curb and a sidewalk on both sides of the opening or not? I'm sorry, I can't quite
curb,
see it.
planter strip, and sidewalks.
Okay.
And on one side, on the, say, the west side, it ends pretty quickly.
Is the west side my right?
Your left.
Okay, my left is, okay, going towards Singer Creek Park.
That curb return ends pretty shortly because there's no right-of-way there. So the Mountain View right-of-way ends there.
Okay.
On your right side it goes all the way to it covers the entirety of the property frontage.
Okay, thank you. That really is very, very helpful.
Okay. Are there any other questions for the transportation or regarding traffic while Mr. Ripplinger is at the dais?
So Mayor Lyle Smith, obviously we had a lot of testimony on both sides regarding what's going to, what could possibly happen on Mountain View. And that's a concern.
Commissioner Smith?
Was the testimony that we just heard say that there was no on-street parking?
Yes.
No.
Mr. Ray said that all of the parking requirements were taken care of within the development site.
Rylands is a public street, is it not?
They changed it from a private street to a driveway.
I can provide.
I thought those were the side alleys, not the actual street. It clearly says public street on the plan.
Sorry, I can provide some clarification there. So the city requires that development have between the minimum and the maximum number of parking stalls accommodated for. In this case, they need a minimum of 60 stalls or a maximum of 150, so they can fall, within those bookends or anywhere in between. In this case, they proposed 116 spaces, all accommodated on their property, not utilizing any right-of-way. There's an additional 31 parking stalls identified on the site plan that you saw in the adjacent right-of-way, which they did not count towards their parking minimums. So they have the 116, plus there's an adjacent 31, which you could count towards off-street parking, but they did not.
So Rylands is not a public street through the site?
It will be a public street. That will be the only public street. All the other streets identified will not be public streets. They'll be drive aisles.
So then can you explain all the cars on Rylands that was in that picture that we just saw?
You will be able to park on street on Rylands. It's just not counted towards the parking standard. So they meet the parking standard without counting the cars on Rylands.
Commissioner O'Donnell? I think Commissioner Smith's thinking. Commissioner O'Donnell?
Just a follow-up question to the parking. does the proposal allow parking in fire lanes? And secondly, is that usual and custom that we allow that? Secondly, has the fire department reviewed proposed parking situation for access of fire vehicles, specifically as a follow-up to Commissioner Smith's question?
The application has been transmitted to the fire department. There is a condition of approval that the fire department review the proposal before it's complete. So they will look at exactly what you're saying so that there is no parking in fire lanes. And so there's a clear condition of approval that identifies that they can exclude areas for parking to accommodate public safety.
And my concern was simply that I thought I read where it was parking in the fire lanes. My secondary concern, based on my own experience where I live with a 32-foot street and curvature to the street, is parking on both sides of the street prohibited the access of specific emergency vehicles that would have had to reach the second floor. So my hope is that the fire department reviews this proposal.
So that's kind of related to my earlier question of saying what in the future steps, there are future steps that this developer or this development would have to go through to make sure it checks all the boxes, either with the fire department and, any archaeological things, the stormwater system still has to be built and it has to meet our design standards. And so therefore, at this point in time, they are essentially proposing something that meets our design standards. Therefore, it doesn't have to be, is that correct? It doesn't have to be in the ground right now in order to check all the boxes.
Correct.
Okay. I have an additional question about the sewer lines. They brought up Mr. Lewis, your sewer line replacement and the map that's publicly available and the sewer line development. Do you know, was that taken into consideration in the applicant's proposal as far as the quality of the sewer lines in the area?
Right, development applications aren't necessarily required to go that far downstream with sanitary sewer, but our master plan covers the requirements for sanitary sewer design. And if some of you will remember that downstream is a moratorium area that we rebuilt recently, and that was rate funded. There was some element of that was developer funded. This developer not only is going to be required to develop on-site systems, they do have to analyze some of the downstream system. If there's any problems there, they have to fix that if it's triggered because of their development. The work that we're proposing to do in that area is part of our I&I program, and a lot of that's just got to do with the fact that there are so many old pipeline systems in there that need to be upgraded. So, the two aren't related, but I would say that the work that we do in there will significantly reduce the amount of flow going through our piped network. And that'll be a good thing for everybody, including any new development. Our master plans are based on the kind of development that we're talking about. I don't know if there's a zone change in this particular thing being proposed or not, but yeah, it's the sewer. We need to maintain our sewers no matter whether this development moves forward or not.
Right. All right. Any other questions, discussion by the commissioners?
Staff has make sure I have the right version of it. I know we've changed this so many times, so I'm looking at the version from July 22nd, and condition number 23 says that the applicant shall provide a revised site plan indicating all access ways, et cetera, et cetera. So as part of that, can we add to that, since it was raised in the record, that this information that's required for a site plan and design approval is in 1762.40, and it lists a number of items that are supposed to be on a site plan, and I did not see those on the site plan. It was raised in the record. As like I said previously, it says shall. So I would like to see that condition amended so that those things are met.
I appreciate Commissioner McGriff's point about the word shall, but those are, as I understand it, submittal requirements, not substantive review criteria. So what,
I asked why they weren't put on the submittal. That was my initial question from weeks ago. So anyway, if our code says that they're supposed to submit something as part of a submittal and they don't do it, I guess the question is, if they have to revise the site plan anyway, why can't they just put the things on there that they were supposed to put on in the first place?
and the things you want on the site plan include?
There's a whole list of items on that. Sorry, I have like a zillion papers here, sorry. You know, planning is pretty comprehensive, and trying to keep track of everything is difficult, even for somebody who knows a little bit. I just came across that page, so hang on.
These aren't necessarily requirements of the land use package, right? This is the site plan that's required as part of the design package.
Right, it's part of site plan design review.
Well, that will come.
That will come later.
Yeah.
Those are things that we're asking them to include in their submittal when that time comes.
Well, I thought this was a site plan and design review. It says SP 210001, approval of site plan and design review and a lot line adjustment. So why is that coming?
I think what Mr. Lewis is talking about is in reference to condition 22, amending the site plan with respect to driveways, right? And what Commissioner McGriff is talking about is submittal requirements for a complete application for site plan and design review. I think she's wanting the condition revised to reflect those submittal requirements.
Which were not included.
I'm not sure that the city, that a submittal requirement is not an approval criterion. So we can't deny an application because it does not include a submittal requirement.
I'm not suggesting that, Ms. Richter. I'm just suggesting that we get the information that our code asks for as part of, if they're going to revise it anyway, what's the harm in putting it in, which is supposed to be there in the first place? I'm not saying that that's a criteria for denial. I did not mention that at all. I'm just asking for information that should already have been there, and since they're going to revise it anyway, why don't we just have it, put it on there? That way it'll be totally 100% complete.
Very well.
The other thing I wanted to ask about is involving, there was a lot of discussion in the staff report about there was going to be no removal of trees. Well, I think there are going to be some trees removed because they need to develop the property. Do we have any provisions? What I guess I'm asking is, I'm hoping that most of the trees that are on sorry, John, I'm just very directionally challenged. So adjacent to Stafford Park, I'm hoping that most of those trees will be in that 10-foot buffer strip that's required so that we don't have any removal of any vegetation there that stays with the park. I don't think there are any on the Singer Creek Park side, which would be my left, and I don't know what direction that is, I'm sorry.
Well, I think we covered that topic last time. It's not something that we can require. We can hope that the developer saves as many trees as they can, and as long as, they're not required to keep trees, they're only required to mitigate and replant.
Right, but what if the trees are on the property line and they're primarily into the park? That's my concern. I don't want to see any harm. I don't think we want any harm to come to significant vegetation that's adjacent to Stafford Park, since that was given to the city.
Ms. Turway?
There's a condition of approval to basically redo the tree survey, acknowledging that particularly those trees near Stafford Park are not adequately displayed in their particular location. And so it's unknown where they are. If some trees are on city property and they would like to remove city trees, that's sort of an issue.
Well, the question is, what if they're kind of straddling?
If they're related to this development application, then they're approved with this, they're reviewed through this development application. If they're on city property, Ms. Richter can talk about what extent city approval is required to remove a tree on city property.
Well, there's also the issue, because they are larger, you've got roots extending out, so there's an issue with disturbance of that. Again, I don't know exactly where the property line is, but looking at the aerial, I can see a line of trees on that particular frontage.
Right. So this application didn't propose any disturbance on park property.
Commissioner O'Donnell?
So it appears we're in a deliberation and comment made by the City Commission. And that being said, I'll preface what I'm about to say by saying that none of this that I'm about to say relies on any information presented tonight. The basis for these comments is either the staff reports or the information that was put forward in the September 1st meeting. So I think I'll go over 3 items that I'd like to be possibly reviewed and considered. We've already talked about the fire department review. There's no need to revisit that. We talked about that'll be part of the ongoing process in this application. The second piece I'll talk about is the stormwater runoff issues that were actually brought up in the first meeting by Ms. Heathwood. And she actually referred to contour lines and the lay of the land. And I did drive that mountain view. And I did not detect any drains, so that needs to be, we need to be on solid ground, and we have to be able to handle those stormwater runoffs. If the land does appear to break, either based on the contour lines or the physical observations, both the north and south, and hopefully the impact on Singer Creek is properly addressed. My main concern of the 3 things that I think need to be reworked, resubmitted, is the traffic study. Because I think it's deficient in so many ways. If you read it, there's a number of unsupported assumptions and conclusions that are put forward by Mr. Ripplinger, and he just restated them in tonight's meeting. The assumption that people are going to exit on the homes and not use Mountain View. The attention to Mountain View, if I say minimal, it's nice. The approach is non-existent. Given the fact that there's a through street through this development, I'm surprised there's not a requirement for more consideration of Mountain View. And I couch that in terms of things that this commission always considers, that being livability and safety. Obviously, that street is narrow. There are no sidewalks to speak of. There's no traffic control access to Malala from Mountain View. If you look at that, Mountain View enters Malala almost at the crest of the hill from Malala. And I'm curious what we're going to do on traffic control. And I think it's an unsupported assumption that people will simply use homes. I don't think it's valid. The impact on Lynn Avenue, really consider either. And
Commissioner O'Donnell?
yes.
We can only hear you when you talk directly at your computer and your screen. So when you're turning your head, you're hard for us to hear.
Okay, you want me to review the traffic study again? Because I will.
No, I think we got that part. Yeah, we got most of that. Just, you could pick up where I interrupted you.
Well, again, I just feel in total, the traffic study on its face is deficient for its lack of consideration of Mountain View and access to Molalla, site distances, elevation changes on Mountain View, lack of traffic control, healthy assumptions that people are going to use homes and not Mountain View. And later, just safety. I just think the study needs to be reviewed and maybe fleshed out a little bit. So those are my concerns. The submittals that were before, and again, they were all based on September 1st testimony and including the staff reports and nothing. Thanks.
All right. So I think we got most of that. Your audio was definitely difficult. I guess, Ms. Turway, I'm wondering about what Commissioner O'Donnell was just saying about asking for a new traffic study. Our options tonight, how does that play into our options? I mean, our options tonight, I mean, we don't have time to say, go and do a new traffic study or anything like that. So it's either, is that a factor of our appeal, of one of the appeals, particularly from the Berkley Hills Neighborhood Association, and whether or not that is sufficient enough for us to, that's the decision, right? Whether that's sufficient enough on just that one merit alone or the other merits to make a decision on the appeal to.
Well, I think that the question needs to be, what is the criteria that the traffic study is satisfying? The traffic study is to show that there is intersection capacity. It is to show that there's adequate sight distance. It is to show that there's safety. It is to show compliance with the transportation system plan. These are all clear and objective, calculable determinations. And that's what the applicant is saying that their traffic study shows. So either it's not reliable, either the commission finds it's not reliable, or, I mean, I think that the starting point needs to be, what is the approval criterion that the commission has concerns that would necessitate a new traffic study, or a denial based on the lack of sufficiency of the traffic study.
I guess, Carrie, my question isn't about your last statement. It's just that the traffic study is deficient in not addressing all of the access points, and to say that nobody, or assume that everybody's going to use homes is contrary to what we have heard that is in the record. There are two streets. I mean, if we didn't think that people were going to not use Mountain View, why would we have requested Rylance be taken there? Why didn't we say, okay, you don't have to have access onto Mountain View, you can just dead end there and that'll be the end of it? But to me, there was some logic to say that it needed to be a through street, and then to not have it addressed more than it was addressed in the traffic study. That's where I feel it was deficient, in not addressing some of the concerns that have been raised. Plus, Mountain View Street, as we know, is a substandard right-of-way. We know it's not going to get any bigger, but
One piece that I'd like to add to this, I was at the neighborhood meeting yesterday for just a little bit of time, and I was there long enough to hear the police report, or the police department's report on that. There was a lot of concern from the neighborhood about Mountain View Street and the intersection with Malala Avenue. What I see this development providing is a secondary access that existing residents will use the new Reliance Street?
Rylance.
Street.
Yeah, not Reliance, Rylance. There you go. You got it, Rylance.
Based on what I heard from the neighborhood, that Malala Mountain View intersection, there's nothing we can really do with that other than signage and enforcement, right? We're not going to get wider there. We're not going to put signalization there. We're not going to do any of those kind of things, yet that area is intended to support large number of additional homes, whether it's this density or some other density, I'm not really sure. But the deal for this is Reliance is going to provide for the existing residences and the new residences a new opportunity to use homes. Now, if you're really as concerned as what I heard from the neighborhood about using the existing intersection, you're likely to use the new intersection on the Holmes Lane. It does need to include good sight distance and evaluation on Holmes Lane for sure. And I agree that Mountain View is a substandard street, so is there things can we do? There's only so much we can ask of the developer to do off-site, as you know. There's takings issues with some of those kind of things. So I just want to point out that Reliance is going to provide, the new piece of it is going to provide new solutions for the existing residents as well, which will take away from the traffic count that uses it today, like who uses Mountain View and Malala Avenue today.
Here's my suggestion, is that the finding regarding traffic needs to acknowledge that there are some issues with Mountain View Street, regardless of whether people are going to use Rylance Lane or not, and that it isn't indicated in the report, either the traffic report, the staff report, but again, trying to balance all of the things that we've heard and everything that's in the record. It seems to me that we need to make some acknowledgement about that there's going to be X, Y, or Z, because it is a problem. So I'm suggesting that there needs to be some additional statements about that, since it is in the record. Just saying, I'm not asking the developer to do anything about it. I'm just saying we don't have sufficient findings to say that, everything is hunky-dory. And everything that Commissioner O'Donnell said that I was able to hear, I have the same concern.
Commissioner O'Donnell?
In the interest of clarity, I'll restate my concern. I feel the traffic study is deficient and not reliable. I think it's based on unsupported assumptions and conclusions about preference to use homes versus Mountain View. I think there's safety concerns with access to Malala from Mountain View. I think these assumptions that people are not going to use Mountain View, I'm certain that when people are coming up Malala and the light is backed up, they're going to turn right on Mountain View. And I just feel that the traffic report is deficient in those studies, and I think it's based on unfounded assumptions, and I stand by that conviction. I'd like to see it reviewed and strengthened. Thanks.
All right. So in an effort for us to try to...
Just a second, staff asked me to find that section, and unfortunately, I had highlighted it myself, and I didn't even see it. So what I was looking at in the code with regard to the site plan is on page 97, and hang on, I've got section 1762. So it says site plan or plans to scale containing the following, and it lists items 1, 2, 3, 4, A, B, C, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. They've got most of it. 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, and then B is a landscape plan drawn to scale showing the types of existing trees, which you've already noted in the staff report. They don't have a tree plan. They have architectural sketches. Apparently they've been revised a couple of times. I don't know if I have the latest version. And then it goes on. So that's that finding that was made for that on page 98 of the staff report says finding complies as proposed, but it does not. So that finding needs to be beefed up because it doesn't meet A through all of A through D. It meets some of it, doesn't meet all of it. The thing that I support in this is that this is zoned R2. It is an allowed outright permitted use in the zone. Through site plan and design review, the staff and the city can have conditions, add conditions that are clear and objective, that meet the standards in order to make a finding that this meets everything that we have. And that is what we are working our way through right now. And we're probably about 90% there with a few tweaks here and there with regard to traffic and other things. But this is not, I'm not suggesting denial because that is not one of the criteria. This is allowed. I'm not, crazy about the design, but that's subjective. That's, my personal opinion, which has no bearing on this, but we were asked to look at everything. So that's where I'm coming from. The two things, trees, traffic, and some of the statements that were made that refer to other things that, again, I can't make a finding about it because I don't know what those things are.
So, Ms. Richter, is there, I see one of our options for motions for this evening, and it says that we could potentially provide revised conditions of approval. Is there a clear and objective approval based on what you've heard about the traffic analysis that could be added that is clear and objective? Versus an outright denial?
Well, it's difficult because they can go do the traffic study again, but those study conclusions would have to be reviewed by someone and measured against some standard. So what I think Commissioner O'Donnell is asking for is a traffic study that allocates some number of trips to Mountain View and then evaluates whether or not how Mountain View will function with those trips. And that is a discretionary evaluation. And I think that what Mr. Lewis said is that the city has adopted a transportation system plan, has evaluated the adequacy of the transportation system, Mountain View and Holmes, to accommodate density at R2 density. So it's sort of baked into the baseline already. And the reason why we do the transportation impact study at this phase is to evaluate intersections and quantifiable things. And so I can try to brainstorm for a minute a clear and objective criterion, but what is that going to, that Mountain View has to be a certain width, that it has to be a certain side, has to have certain improvements. I mean, we don't have the data to presume that because the transportation system plan already says that Mountain View as it exists is acceptable.
And what we're saying is that we don't agree with that.
But that's already in the transportation system plan that was determined.
Yeah, well, it can be wrong.
Mr. Ripplinger.
Before you say anything, please keep it to the materials in the record, okay? Thank you.
We've talked about the guidelines for traffic impact studies. Can I talk about that a little bit?
If they're in the record, are they in the record?
Well, I've referred to the guidelines for traffic impact analysis at this hearing and the previous hearing. And it's my opinion that the applicant has performed a traffic study consistent with our guidelines for traffic impact analysis adopted by this commission. I said the same thing 2 weeks ago at the hearing. The applicant's traffic impact study accurately presents the information about trip generation, and they have analyzed the intersections that they are required to analyze according to the same guidelines. They did make the assumption that all of the traffic from the site would use the intersection of Holmes Lane at Rylands. When they did the operational analysis, using all of the traffic at that location, it was calculated to operate at level of service B. Level of service B easily meets the operational standards that we have in the TSP and the city code, which is level of service D. If they shifted some of that traffic to the Mountain View side of the intersection, it would only make Holmes Rylands operate better. If they shifted all of the traffic to Rylands Mountain View, it would operate at least as well as Holmes Rylands does under their projection, because the volumes on Mountain View are so much lower than on Holmes. So they have satisfied the criteria about operations at an intersection. They have also analyzed site distance at both proposed access points. That's all in the applicant's traffic report, and the traffic report was developed to satisfy the city's adopted traffic impact analysis guidelines.
All right, thank you, Mr. Ripplinger. This is one of those cases that it's frustrating for the neighborhood, I know, and for the residents, because we are held to specific documents and criteria and checkboxes in which we have to make decisions versus our own personal opinions, or, you know, that isn't our own personal judgment in that sense is not acceptable.
Well, part of it, the comment that Mr. Ripplinger made is that it was based on assumptions.
Well, all scenarios are based on assumptions.
And you know, I guess as long as I've lived in this town, I have had concerns about how that is done, because again, we've had testimony on both sides basically saying that there is a problem. And I can't in good conscience say that there isn't a problem, because the testimony on both sides indicate that there is a problem, and the assumption is just an assumption. So reality and assumptions aren't meeting in the middle.
Well, if I understand what Mr. Ripplinger said.
Oh, I understood what he said.
Well, I'm going to repeat it.
Sure, go ahead, thank you.
Is that they did multiple assumptions or multiple scenarios of analysis in the traffic impact based on shifting traffic between majority Holmes Lane, using Rylands and Mountain View, and based on that, they were looking at the level of service for both of those intersections, and because of the lower traffic that is normally on Mountain View, when they shifted traffic from Holmes to Mountain View, it made the traffic even better on Holmes and at that intersection, and it didn't degrade the Mountain View intersection with Malala or the road of Mountain View so poorly that it triggered a problem. Did I summarize that correctly?
No, I'm sorry. I perhaps was a bit too confusing on that they did not do multiple scenarios of analysis, but
I wish they had.
the one that they did analyze was the one that I judged to be the potential for having the greatest impact. So that was the one that they did.
And that's what's required in our.
They met the requirements of our guidelines.
Commissioner O'Donnell, you had your hand up first, and then Commissioner Smith.
Well, I'm going to agree with Commissioner McGriff. I still feel the assumption is faulty. I think there's no consideration of human behavior. I think to simply analyze one section, how can you not analyze Mountain View and Malala when it's every bit as proximate to the development as Holmes and Malala? And how can you not analyze Holmes and Lynn? So I stand by my contention that the study is deficient on its face and needs to be reworked. Thanks.
Commissioner Smith.
We are at 10 o'clock.
Yeah, I was going to give you a minute before you have 3 minutes. Was that all you had? Yes, we do need.
Forward.
Yeah, we need approval to go past 10 p.m. I think that's. I need a thumbs up from.
I'm fine.
People.
I'm fine.
Okay.
I want to get through both of the public hearings, and we might not get to the cross-street banners, and I'm sorry about that, Amy, but.
All right. Yeah, so there are 2 appeals. We've only been talking mainly about the first one. We are quickly running out of time.
Could I make a statement about that? So I'm not exactly sure why the lot line adjustment has been appealed, but regardless of that, staff will tell us, but I support staff's contention that the right-of-way improvements on the piece of properties, both pieces of properties that are subject to this application, that's a valid condition, and it should be done. So I support staff on that.
We have general agreement with Commissioner McGriff on that piece. So this is the applicant's appeal regarding condition number 3, I believe it is, about the development for the piece of property that's only going to have a single residential home on it.
It's part of the development, and regardless of when they did it, the improvements should be made.
Commissioner O'Donnell will join the Commissioner McGriff.
Make a motion on that one. I'm not ready to do it on the other one, but I definitely can do that one.
I think they're linked. Do we need to one affect the other, or can we tackle one at a time?
If the commission would prefer to tackle one at a time, that's fine. My preference before you tackle the substance would be a motion, or at least as part of the first motion, a rejection of testimony submitted by those who don't have standing and new evidence, both oral and written, that was submitted, if that's where the commission wants to go.
Okay.
Yeah, I would move that, again, sorry, public, but the record was closed and we cannot accept nor review information that was submitted after the record was closed. And we have to, I hate to use the word reject, but I guess that's the term. We have to reject that information. Oh, and that we deny the appeal regarding the lot line adjustment. I think staff's findings are sufficient and will hold up in terms of where this needs to go.
Okay, motion.
Second by Donald.
Okay, motion's been made and seconded. Do we need to make any motion adjustments?
I just wanted to suggest that in addition to rejecting new evidence, we reject testimony submitted by individuals who did not have standing.
And I would amend the motion to reject, regrettably reject any information that was submitted by persons who did not have standing in this application.
Commissioner O'Donnell, would you agree with that amendment?
Amended motion seconded by Commissioner O'Donnell.
Mr. Wiley, will you please call the roll?
Commissioner Frank O'Donnell.
Aye.
Commissioner Denise McGriff.
Aye.
Commissioner Rocky Smith.
Aye.
Commissioner Adam Marl.
Aye.
Mayor Rachel Lyle Smith.
Aye.
Motion passes.
All right, so the only appeal that's left is the Berkley Hills Neighborhood Association appeal. We've talked long and hard about the transportation and the traffic analysis. We'd have to come up with a very clear and objective condition approval that we think can pass, and I'm not sure that we can do that, particularly if everybody, our subject matter experts are saying that it meets our criteria, our staff say it meets our criteria.
I was just asking for the finding regarding that be beefed up so that it covers CYA's Mountain View Street. I don't see that in the finding.
Is that a finding edit that you can make when you come back easily? Okay.
We can give it our best shot.
That's all we can do.
Certainly try.
That's all we can do.
Okay. So if we were to do that, is there any other conditions of approval or anything from the Barkley Hills Neighborhood Association appeal that the City Commission wants to consider? I think going this route, this means that we would uphold the appeal based on revised conditions of approval. Is that true? Am I wording that correctly?
We would, well, I think we would reject the appeal, but amend the conditions of approval.
Okay.
Because I think the appeal wants denial. And if you're going to approve the applications with conditions, you would reject the appeal, but have revised conditions.
Okay.
I just want to say to the public that, again, I appreciate all the work that everybody's done on this, but again, the bar is very high. And as I said before, this is permitted in that zone. If this was conditional use or something else, there are more grounds. You've heard our concerns about traffic, as well as, even though we've been told that they're not valid, we understand some of these things. There's lots and lots and lots of conditions. And again, my concern is that, that we want to help, we want the city to grow, but we need to make sure that our community is protected. These people are going to be citizens of our community too. So it applies to everybody. And we want this to be the best that it can possibly be.
Are there any other revised conditions of approval that the City Commission would like to consider?
I know staff doesn't like it, but I still want 23 revised. I want that information. We deserve to have the information. So however you add it or add a new condition, should have been submitted.
That's being specific about the future site plan submittals, right?
I think that condition, either we amend condition 23 or we make a new condition that
Either.
requires the filing of a staff report that includes the items.
The site,
The site plan items, it's 1762040A through B.
Yeah, if you can add another condition.
And I think what I would prefer to do on that one, if it's okay, would be to go back and see which of these have been done, so we don't have to have redundancy.
That's fine.
Okay.
I could kind of tell you that, but you can go ahead and look it up too.
All the other things that we've talked about tonight, they're either meeting the standard or they will be addressed as part of the next phases as far as sewer lines, stormwater runoff, all of that. I think they were definitely good items to raise. This is just step one in the process. If I didn't think that I know they have other hoops that they're going to have to jump through. They have to meet our standards, and, the bar at this point is where it's at, and there are other bars that they have to go through that will try to ensure that they address the concerns that we've heard about sewer lines.
Yeah, I would.
Archaeological, stuff like that.
Yeah, it would be very helpful in the future that when there is a finding, I just find the statement that staff has determined that it is possible, likely, and reasonable that the applicant can meet this standard through conditions of approval. It doesn't really say anything. It's kind of it doesn't make me feel comfortable is what I'm saying with that statement. Likely and reasonable. Likely and reasonable that maybe they won't meet the standard. It's likely and reasonable that maybe they can meet it. Maybe it's likely and reasonable that they can exceed the standard. There needs to be something there that ties that to what it is you want them to be doing. Just for future reference. I found it all over the staff report. It was just a little disconcerting. I couldn't make that work.
All right, so I think we've provided two revised conditions of approval, or we're revising one and adding a new one.
Revising one or adding a new one.
And beefing up one.
Or we want to word that. So we have the traffic one.
Is that a condition or a finding? I think what we were talking about is beefing up the findings with respect to Mountain View.
Okay, beefing up the findings.
Adding a condition or amending condition 23. To deal with the site plan submittal items.
Yes.
Before I let it slip, the staff report, August 23rd staff report included some amendments to 5 conditions to make them clear and objective. And I'd be happy to if you have any concerns about that, or I haven't heard any discussion about it. The applicant didn't raise anything, then I don't think that the neighborhood did. So would assume that the commission would support those additional amendments.
Yeah, to make them clear and objective.
Sorry, Mayor Lawsmith, I made a note on one of the pages in staff report that I did not get an answer to real quickly. I can find, I don't know if it's got a page. There was a statement in the document, I believe on the 25th, that said trees within this buffer area must be retained, or if they are to be removed, they must be mitigated pursuant to the tree replacement schedule. And I think you already know how I feel about mitigation. Chopping down big trees and replace them with little trees, particularly if it's in a buffer area. I really would like us to strongly encourage that they not do that. Particularly the buffer area between our parks. I don't think there are any on the Singer Creek side. There's no trees along there, but there are on the other side.
So again, that's wording in the findings as far as encouraging tree preservation.
It says that this condition encourages the retention of existing trees, but it kind of doesn't.
Okay, are we ready to have a motion? So my understanding from what our attorney is advising Because we are providing additional conditions of approval, that would mean that we would deny the BHNA appeal and provide our own conditions of approval and approval with our own conditions of approval. Do we not have a motion? If we don't make this decision tonight, do we have to have a special meeting? We probably do between now and the 1st of October in order to tackle this, in order to hit our 120 days. Do you need more time to think about it? We can do that, just know that you guys were committing to another meeting. Well, I think she needs a motion in order to revise. It's a tentative approval in order to review the revised findings, right?
Well, I wanted some direction before we put effort into drafting findings, and I think I'm getting direction, but if we had a tentative decision on, with a motion, then I'd have, more clear direction. I can draft findings and we can come back and at a special meeting and I can present them and, we can continue from there.
Make a motion to move that we continue this to a date and time certain so that we can review the findings and make a motion at that time.
Okay, we'll have to identify the date certain. Just a minute, please.
I'll second that motion.
What do you think, Mr. Conkle? What's our date certain?
23rd or 24th?
We have to get the agenda posted, right?
Tomorrow.
Well, we'd have to write it. What if we come back on the 6th and if the commission has revisions, we could have the special meeting on the 7th or 8th? No? Yes?
Don't forget the city commission has a special meeting on the 28th and the 30th.
We have special meetings on the 28th and the 30th. So what we need is a little bit of time to write the findings and then post them. So it's hard to just spin up something right next, the next couple of days.
We have OC 2040 on the 29th.
You have OC 2040 on the 29th?
From 6 to 8. We want to start at 8.
Where?
Here? It's virtual.
Okay. 29th? So Wednesday?
Time? 29th?
I can cover for you.
We have a meeting on the 28th and also a meeting potentially on the 30th.
If we start at 8, if we after.
So, would you be willing to start at 6 o'clock? Okay, 7 o'clock?
7 o'clock on the 29th?
Correct.
You said correct.
Yep, if that works, yep.
Commissioner Smith and Commissioner O'Donnell, thumbs up on that?
I think so.
Looks all right.
Okay. So the motion was made to continue this meeting. We have now since determined a date certain of September 29th at 7 p.m. Does the motioner agree to the modification? Yep. Okay, and I think the motion was seconded by Commissioner O'Donnell, I believe.
That's correct, it was.
All right, and you've given the thumbs up on the date certain, so therefore we can call the roll on this.
Commissioner Frank O'Donnell.
Aye.
Commissioner Denise McGriff. Aye. Commissioner Rocky Smith.
Aye, sorry.
I didn't hear you, Commissioner Smith.
Aye.
And Commissioner Adam Marl.
Aye.
And Mayor Rachel Lyle Smith.
Aye.
Motion passes.
Oh my goodness. All right. So I believe we probably need to do the public hearing on the Father's Heart.
I would support that.
I think we need to do that.
Going till 10:30.
This one should be pretty quick. So this is agenda item 8B, Father's Heart Street Ministry Conditional Use Permit for Warming Shelter. If you'll remember, this is essentially the final findings based on one of our previous very long meetings. Ms. Turway, do you have anything for us tonight on this?
We can provide a brief summary of what's in the findings, but if you would prefer not to, we're just here to answer any questions that you have.
But before you do that, I need to ask the commission if there have been any ex parte contacts, conflicts of interest, or bias since the hearing on
August 18th.
August 18th. The record's closed, so I don't have to do the rest of it, but I just need to poll the commissioners and ask that question.
I've not had any contacts or any bias or conflict of interest on this item.
Can the commissioners just volunteer, please?
Yes, that's fine, yeah. I have only been contacted about when the date was for the adoption of findings. And I said that it was tonight. That's been my contact. Like everything else, I drive on 12th Street a lot because I live in Oregon City. So I've been by the site because I'm going somewhere near there.
No biases, no conflicts of interest, no ex parte contact.
Same here. Same here by Commissioner O'Donnell.
All right.
And does anybody in the audience wish to question the commissioners about these disclosures? Please proceed.
All right. If there's not any further discussion, I think we discussed this item for like 4 hours at the August meeting. Is there a motion? The motion in the staff report is to adopt the final findings for denial as its decision and deny the planning files.
Commissioner O'Donnell would make that motion.
Second.
All right, the motion's been made and seconded, and for the record, those planning files, do we need to read the numbers?
No, it's fine.
No, okay. Motion's been made and seconded.
Commissioner Frank O'Donnell.
Aye.
Commissioner Denise McGriff.
Aye.
Commissioner Rocky Smith.
Aye.
Commissioner Adam Marl.
Aye.
And Mayor Rachel Lyle Smith.
Aye.
Motion passes.
I'm sorry to interrupt. We received a letter from
Pamela Cromer.
after the record was closed, and if I can ask, would you please amend the motion to reject the letter from Pamela Cromer from the record?
I wasn't aware there was any letter from anyone.
I wasn't either, okay, so we need a motion.
Since I made the original motion, I'll amend the motion to reflect the statement made by our attorney to reject the letter submitted by Pamela Cromer, which I have not seen.
Second as amended.
All right.
Commissioner Frank O'Donnell.
Aye.
Commissioner Denise McGriff.
Aye.
Commissioner Rocky Smith,
Aye.
Commissioner Adam Marl,
Aye.
and Mayor Rachel Lyle Smith.
Aye.
Motion passes.
Perhaps it might be a good idea for us to further emphasize that while we support public testimony, after the record is closed, we can't accept stuff, folks, as much as we'd like to.
So our general business, we pulled an item from the consent agenda. And then we also have 9A, 9B, and 9C. And believe it or not, we have public comment signed up for each one of these items. Not 9A, for 9B and 9C. So unless, I would like to get to the public comment just because they waited all this long. I said earlier we would start with the one that we pulled from the consent agenda. And why don't we tackle that one, and then we'll tackle, if we want to rearrange or pull things, I'll need a motion to change the agenda. So the item we pulled was 7B. Says final updates to the policy for cross-street banners and banners on street light poles. We wanted to hear the public comment. I have Amy Wilhite. Do we want to go directly to public comment?
Good.
Yes. Amy, you want to come up? You know the rules, 3 minutes, your name and city for the record.
Sorry, my knee froze up there. So I filled out the comment card for me personally, but before I begin that, I'll fill out another one if I need to speak on behalf of the neighborhood. I sent a letter yesterday and asked for it to be put on the record. My name's Amy Wilhite. I'm the chair of the Barkley Hills, sorry, I've been here for too many hours. Gaffney Lane, sorry. Gaffney Lane neighborhood.
You can be whatever neighborhood you want.
Right now for
At the moment,
Gaffney
I'm
Lane?
speaking for Gaffney Lane.
Okay, so she needs 5 minutes.
It won't take me 5 minutes.
Okay. I know Jacob was looking at me though, like needing clarification what was happening.
We're all from the neighborhoods, right?
I just wanted to make sure that Jacob said that the letter that was sent would be put on the record. There's 1,141 pages on the packet for tonight, and I couldn't tell if it was in there or not. So I'm not sure exactly where it'll be, but I want to make sure that the public knows that the Gaffney Lane neighborhood did send a letter following up on an email from May 28th, where we asked to be able to discuss and talk about the cross-street banners, and we were never responded to until I made a comment, and then Mayor Rachel Lyle Smith said she was sorry she hadn't gotten back to us, and she would get back to us, and we never heard again. And so when I saw this on the agenda, I got very upset. And I received an email yesterday from Commissioner Morrow saying he would pull it from the consent agenda. So when Rachel asked if he was going to pull it and he didn't say anything, that was very upsetting until she said that there was a public comment. And then Adam said he would pull it. So I don't know if that was just a misunderstanding, but that's what happened. And that's just a continuing of what we're frustration, dealing with processes, dealing with whatever, but we just don't feel like we're being heard. And I feel like if I hadn't filled out a comment card, it would not have been pulled from the agenda. I can't testify to Adam's state of mind of whether he would have or not, but when Rachel clearly asked if he would pull anything, and he said no, until she said there was public comment. So I just want the public to know that's why we're here. And I'm done with my Gaffney Lane because I don't have permission to say anything else.
Okay. I will comment and say, if it's on the consent agenda, it's optional, and we don't have to pull it. And we've talked about this before you were on the commission, Commissioner Morrow. We had this come up of like, if there's public comment on it and it's on the consent agenda, what do we do?
I would have commented under the regular public comment had I known but he told me he was going to pull it.
Right.
So I would have probably done a procedural like that.
Right. Yeah, we've had that procedural kind of thing before where it wasn't clear like when folks could comment if something was on the consent agenda and what would happen if we didn't pull it. So that is one of the kind of confusing things that has come up in the past. So yeah, I'll acknowledge that. And I think Commissioner Morrow, you want to?
Yeah, thank you for waiting throughout this whole night to speak with us. I just wanted to say that the reason I wanted to pull it from the consent agenda was because I wanted to hear from you, and I had no prior knowledge that anyone had signed up to speak on the issue. And so you're exactly right, when I found out that that there was public comment. I did want to hear that. I was debating whether I wanted to have you wait through the entire meeting or, I mean, because I'm pretty sure how this vote is going to go either way. So I just want you to know where my mind is. I was not trying to go back on something that I had told you, and I apologize if it appeared that way.
Thank you.
All right. So you want to speak as an individual, correct?
Yes.
Okay. Now it's 3 minutes.
All right, now I'm speaking as Amy Wilhite, as citizen of Oregon City. I live in the Gaffney Lane neighborhood, and I'm asking you tonight to not approve the cross-street banner policy that is on the agenda. The poles that went up without, that's not a policy. There's nothing in the code that allows for where they went up. So now we're dealing with after the fact. If a homeowner came, did something after the fact, it would be looked at. This is just blanketly getting pushed through, and that's very frustrating. So what I'm asking for is that you do not approve it tonight. I'm asking that as the Public Works Department promised us, that there would be some public or a committee would be formed to decide where the banner should go. I don't know how they came up with it. This is the only place in the city that should be allowed. I heard testimony from Rachel before that, oh yeah, it's the gateway to the city. That doesn't mean it's a good place for a banner. The Gaffney Lane neighborhood and myself had safety concerns. So the poles are up, yes. That's a whole nother story that we have issue with. I have issue with is how those poles went up, but they weren't put up in the proper procedure. You're coming after the fact to cover your butt, and I have a problem with that. I think that it needs to go through the process. We need to have it looked at. Is this really the right place to put a banner? Even if the poles are up, they can be an art if the banner isn't approved to go there. So I think that needs to be two separate pieces. Don't pass it just because the poles are already up. It's not too late. You need, please listen, and postpone approving this policy change.
Okay. Thank you, Ms. Wilhite. Do any of you have questions about this, or?
Are the safety concerns about that particular location or the safety concerns, period? I don't, it's not been articulated. It's not in your letter, and I looked on the past stuff that we had. So that's, I'm trying to understand. So what are the safety, yes, what are the safety concerns?
They were addressed to Public Works, and they were addressed to in the email that I sent on May 28th. This location, we were told we couldn't have that there wouldn't be a crosswalk anywhere near there, because when you're coming off Malala, there's so much going on right now. Right there, you've got the, whatever that strip mall is where Panda Express is, OC Point. So you have one exit from OC Point. You know what that parking lot's like. You know cars get frustrated and they peel out of there. They're gonna take a right, and that's where the banner is gonna be. So people are gonna look, what is that? They're gonna look up. You've got people crossing the street. Lazy Creek is now gonna be a thoroughfare. They're coming out right about there. People are coming off of 213. They're zooming through there. There's so much going on right there. To put a banner where drivers are gonna look up, you could have rear end collisions, you got pedestrian issues, you're gonna have a rapid beacon. Oh, so you're looking up, you're gonna miss the beacon. I mean, there's so much going on right there. It's just not a very good place to put a banner. So yes, it might be at the entrance.
Where's your suggestion for a better place?
Safety-wise, that is a horrible place. And to say, well, at the last meeting it was, well, we'll look after the fact and see if there's accidents. Really? If you have the chance to look at it ahead of time, and I don't know how that was decided because we've specifically asked, and Brian said we would have, he's the project manager, he said we would have a committee look at where should we put banner. It never happened. He asked us to be on the committee. It never happened. So I don't know how that place was decided. And so for them to come to you and say, this is the only place in Oregon City we're going to allow a banner, how did that get decided? Who decided that was the best and safest place to put a banner?
Well, I think the policy is addressing like 2 or 3 locations for banner locations.
That's the only approved place, and it says in the future, they could approve other places. Currently, the policy is there's a place down further on Malala. I can't remember the cross streets, John would know. That's where the only approved place is to have a cross-street banner. They're adjusting that policy to make this be the only approved, and in the future, allowing staff to determine other places that might be appropriate. Is that a correct representation of that? I'm trying not to speak at it off of that, but that's...
So the existing locations near Beverly on Malala Avenue, that hasn't been available to us. It's a PGE installation that hasn't been available to us for several years.
There you go. But it's still in the policy.
It's still there, and it still exists today. Drove under it today. And yeah, it's in our existing policy, but we haven't hung cross-street banners for years. So this project went through a lengthy design process. That's how it got approved where it's at, and funded through both a grant and through the project funding as well. So do we intend to put more? That was the intent when we designed the foundation, when we put this project together. We designed it such that it would be, we'd have a foundation design that would work in several places. So we've talked about another location is near the farmer's market on Beaver Creek Road. And that's the only spot that I have in my head right now. There may be other locations where it may make sense. We've heard from downtown interest. So, but that I think answers that question.
Yeah, is the policy, it says there will be one location that's approved unless further locations come up.
And the commission would, I mean, it would be a capital expense, and we would bring that to the commission. We're not, I think that question came up from you, Mayor Lyle Smith. You asked me that a few weeks back, so.
So the red line version of the policy says display locations are along 99E, Malala Avenue between Highway 213 and Chardias, and Washington Street between Prairie Schooner Way and the Home Depot entrance, because are considered city entryway locations and will be considered first.
Those are the street light banners, remember?
The street light banners.
Yeah, the street light banners.
I'm trying to find the location in this policy for cross-street banners where we've only called out one acceptable location.
Yeah, that's what I was looking for.
I didn't think that was the case.
I know it's in here. I just gotta find it.
Yeah, sorry, I don't have the paperwork. It's in there.
I have it, but.
So
I have it, but I don't
under-
see it.
It doesn't say anything
Under
about.
C, on, I guess it's page 4, following additional requirements, the city's currently established one location allow cross-street banners. The location includes one located on Malala Avenue, south of Chardez, as a cross-street banner.
Which
And
section?
cross-street banners are established by the city. Their standards shall apply, and any future cross-street banner locations established by the city.
Right. Yeah, and it's not red line text because this is the second or third time we've reviewed this policy. And part of the confusion in all of this, and I even went back looking for the meeting, the first time we reviewed this was so long ago, it didn't get on the agenda, was sometime in 2020. I was thinking December, but I looked at December, I think it was earlier than December. It was a while ago. And so when this was brought back to us, knowing that we needed to get something in place, so I really feel like it was an oversight back in 2020, because I know we talked about it. And when this came up a while ago, I reached out to staff and was like, didn't we already pass this? Because I knew we talked about it. And that was when I was corrected and said, no, we actually never adopted it. We did review it. We talked about it. And so these red line changes are actually the second or third version of this banner policy. I did find it interesting in Ms. Wilhite's letter about them being reached out to talk about the placement or a committee about this policy. I was never aware of a committee that was being put together to talk about this policy. It would have been this spring. It came to our work session in July.
Well, we've still got the artwork to put on there on the banner poles. So right now the banner poles exist, but they've got the banner installation location, but there's still some art elements to those that need to happen. So we are planning to do a committee for that. And that was something Brian was was working on, but we wanted to wait until we got this adopted before we move forward. So the artist has got more work to do to those that would include the art element. And I do believe that was the piece that I'll have to check with Brian, but.
Yeah, Angela and I can both testify to the fact that he said it was about, this was before when you guys asked us to go. I mean, on April 19th is when he asked us to begin and it was not about the banner. It wasn't about what it said. It was about placement. Because we've brought this up since day one, the concern and the safety of that. It's not just in the email in May. This has been brought up all along. And what happened is we were ignored, and they asked us to go in on a grant request with them, and we said no, because we haven't addressed the safety issue. And they went behind our backs and applied themselves after they said they needed our support because city departments weren't supposed to go for grants.
Okay, so in the interest of time, I think we just need a decision if we want to have more discussion about this.
I'm just a little concerned that there is a lot going on there. So I just wish that we had addressed this. If we don't approve this, then are those poles going to stay there, or are they going to have to come out? I mean, why isn't it further towards 213? Or is that the end of the project area?
I mean, we worked with our consultant, again, a traffic engineer who you can believe or not, but there was analysis that was done on that. There's a corner, as Amy's pointed out, there's a corner, and then there's the intersections of the driveway and now Lazy Creek Lane. So, yeah, we moved it further out so that it wasn't, so that we felt like it was in the best location.
Can I?
Yes, sorry.
On top of the safety concerns I already have, I would also like to highlight its proximity to the high school. And I know this better than all of you, that high schoolers are reckless drivers. And this is one of the hottest spots for people to go during the lunch hour. That's one of the reasons why I decided to always just bring my own, is because people are crazy. And I want to acknowledge Ms. Wilhite's concern, and I think that is even further amplified by the fact that it is so close to the high school and it is such a popular spot.
The college, maybe?
All right, so if we do deny this policy tonight, then what are we asking staff for? We need to be clear about what this means. I assume this means returning in a work session or something to talk about, you need to review the safety of the location or go through the design process.
Oh, I think we can approve the rest of the policy. We just take out that location until this gets resolved.
Okay.
I mean, if the commission would like it removed, then while we have the contractor on site, I think it would be appropriate. So if you want to tonight make the decision to just remove it, we'll proceed. We've spent a lot of time on this issue, and it sounds like the commission is questioning whether or not that's a reasonable location. We've got a $25,000 grant, I think. I'm not quite sure what will happen to that funding, but we can. I would want to do that with the contractor, and then and they've got through the end of November.
So, John, I support us having a cross-street banner location. What I'm concerned about is that, as much as I love process, I'm hearing from the neighborhood association that we didn't go through the process. It sounds like it was not, their understanding was not to approve the art on it at the location, was the location, period. So, if the city needs an extension on the Metro Enhancement Grant, I think that can happen. That's a pretty routine and easy process because we're trying to do the right thing. So can we do the right thing and step back a little bit so that this can be resolved?
Well, we can always do more process. We've been in front of the commission on this particular topic.
I meant with the public, not us.
Well, there is no guidance on banner installations. Amy's right about that. There's not a public process outlined for banner installations, cross-street banner locations. So,
Create
I don't know, do you want a
a little ad hoc committee, get together, figure it out. I don't think it's that hard. And everybody's not going to agree, but, you know, we've got one person here saying that that's not a safe location. We've got traffic people, which I haven't seen any traffic stuff, saying that it is. So I don't know where to split the difference is.
Commissioner Smith?
I can't believe I'm even going into this conversation. Couple of things. One is the issue of the location. The issue of the location, I think, was addressed not only in the Molo Avenue project, but also in the fact that this commission was part of awarding a grant to put them in on that exact location.
Yes.
Now, Amy Wilhite mentioned a committee that Public Works discussed. There was a committee actually created, but that committee was only to look at the artwork that would be installed on the poles after the poles were already in place. That committee was a couple of people that met, one of which was myself, who basically said, I don't believe this committee should make a final decision on artwork because we are in the process of finalizing the Arts Commission, which will probably be in place in time to review the art piece of this project. So I think there's two separate things. I think the location of the pole was determined long ago. It went through a fair amount of process. The installment of the art is another issue, and that should be going through the Arts Commission.
I agree with you to a point, but I remember that Metro Enhancement meeting, and I remember that there was a range of area where it was going to be. It was not specific. It said it's going to be generally here, you know, in this little corridor. That's what I remember from the meeting. And I still have part of my packet, so I went back and looked at it.
Yeah, but why would we all of a sudden negate a lot of consultant work and time and
I'm not
energy
trying
that
to
went
negate
into
it.
the engineering and the safety of the planning of this corridor?
Then let's, and if we feel that way, then let's make a motion and move on.
Is there a pedestrian crossing right there? Is it right underneath that banner?
not right underneath it. It's
Pretty close.
Further. It's I don't know how many feet it is, but it's further north, so closer to town.
Right.
So make a motion, Rocky.
You're muted. Commissioner Smith?
I see that. I'll make a motion to approve the banner policy.
It's Resolution 2138.
Thank you.
I'll second it for the purposes of any further comment.
Okay, motion's been made and seconded. Any further discussion? All right, seeing none. Mr. Wiley?
Commissioner Frank O'Donnell.
Based on Commissioner Smith's firsthand recitation of events, I'll vote aye.
Commissioner Denise McGriff.
Same reason.
He needs a vote.
Aye. I said same reason, aye.
Commissioner Rocky Smith.
Aye.
And Commissioner Adam Marl.
No.
And Mayor Rachel L. Smith.
Aye.
Motion passes.
All right.
Do we have two items that have people still? Do you just want to take those?
I can't hear you.
I think we have two items that have citizens who want, or individuals who want to comment.
We do. I was wondering, could we just hear the citizen comment without hearing the items? If they're still, I know Mr. Nacita is still
Yeah,
here.
I guess, and if there are questions after you hear it, we'd be happy to answer it to try and expedite this a little bit.
Yeah. I am interested in hearing what the members of the tribe,
Yep.
if they're still, are they still on the line?
It looks like it.
Okay. All right.
In there,
so,
Stacia.
All right, so let's look at the agenda because we do have to handle this appropriately. So it sounds like what we're going to do is actually we need a motion to amend the agenda to move 9A, 9B, and 9C to a future meeting, but we will hear any public comment for those items at this time.
I don't know that you necessarily need a motion.
Just agreement, general agreement that that's what we're doing.
I mean, if we don't get to it, we don't need date certain, but they're not land use.
I just know the strict rules, if you're changing the agenda, you're supposed to like follow all kinds of.
We can't hear you back there.
You can, Mr. Nacita, you can come on up and give your public comment.
Thank you, Madam Mayor.
So you're commenting on 9B, which is the routine pavement maintenance of Promenade Street and Bluff Street.
Yeah, I guess the first point I want to make is in my discussions with Mr. Lewis, he was concerned about this getting further into the fall because there would be problems doing this project if it got too late into the rainy season. And, we're about to face that, and I'm concerned about delaying this to another meeting, at which point there could be the possibility that the project would have to be delayed, until next summer or something. I don't want to go through another, and my neighbors don't want to go through another experience like we had in February, where we had really serious inundation of our properties in the February rain. And we'd really like to get that curb built so we don't have to endure that again. And I'm really nervous about delaying this decision and pushing this back into a point where we could slip into having to wait till next summer.
Is that it for your?
That's not it. No,
Oh.
I just didn't anticipate that someone would try to, get this delayed. That's a real blindside. And I just wanted to very forcefully object to that effort. I have comments, but I guess, it kind of does depend whether the decisions, the commission's going to, make the effort to try to make a decision tonight. I think it's straightforward. I have stuff, I don't want to even pass it out if the commission's prepared to make a decision. Some of the concerns that were mentioned by Mr. Lewis coming from staff were rather vague. I don't even know whose concerns they are and why they are being raised. If the commission doesn't agree with these vague objections and is prepared to make a motion and vote to proceed with this project, that's the way to dispose of it quickly. I came prepared in anticipation of what I thought might be concerns, again, but since I don't know whose concerns they are, or we don't know whose concerns they are, or even what the concerns are beyond what Mr. Lewis mentioned in the staff report, it's really hard to, make public comment. This is not a quasi-judicial land use hearing. You can vote to proceed. I'm here to answer questions. I'm prepared to answer questions. But I see a very slippery slope happening here, and I don't want to see this delayed into October because that may mean a delay into next June.
All right, thank you, Mr. Nacita. Commissioner Smith, you have your hand up.
My concern is we have exactly 10 minutes before we have to end this meeting.
Okay.
Is there somebody trying to hold up the maintenance of Bluff Street? But this is being proposed?
Can I jump into it real quick? I do think this is a straightforward answer. We're just trying to make sure we stay out of hot water with this commission and the Public Works Department. We'd like to do some street maintenance there. It's needed street maintenance. There's trip hazards, there's drainage issues. We just like to move forward with it, but, it's a park. So I'm a little sensitive to the parks. There's no tree removals, there's nothing. It's just pavement maintenance. So if the commission's okay with it, we would move forward with it.
Yeah. I'm actually fine with making a decision on this one. I don't need a presentation.
Okay.
Yeah.
I'm okay. If we were widening the street or we're putting curbs and sidewalks or something in there, yeah, then they would have to go to historic review, but
All right.
we're talking pavement maintenance.
Let's have a motion.
I'd like to move that we authorize staff to proceed with the asphalt patching, overlay, and drainage burn work along sections of Promenade and Bluff Street.
Second.
Motion's been made and seconded. Mr. Wiley?
Commissioner Frank O'Donnell,
Aye.
Commissioner Janice McGriff,
Aye.
Commissioner Rocky Smith,
Aye.
Commissioner Adam Marl,
Aye.
and Mayor Rachel Lau Smith.
Aye.
Motion passes.
Now, if it goes beyond that, you will come back and talk to us, right?
All right, let's stop talking about this item. We just passed it and it's moving forward. All right, so thank you, Mr. Nacita. The next item is we wanted to hear public comment. We have, so just for the folks, Mr. George and Miss Stacia Hernandez, I see you guys there. We have not had a presentation on this at all, and so I think we all had a number of questions. So just note that we haven't had a chance to talk through this item. This is the first time this is coming before us, but since you've waited this long, we would love to hear your public comment. So Mr. John George, I have that you signed up for public comment. You can unmute yourself and
Thank you.
Oh, yeah, we're going to have problems hearing.
Good evening, Mayor Lyle Smith and our
hang on. We got to work out the audio.
We're getting feedback. He may have two devices on, a phone and his computer.
So could you please unmute yourself and talk?
Okay, I'll try to.
Do you have the stream running in the background?
There's a phone.
No, I have no other phone or
It's doing
iPad
something.
or something close to me.
Can you still hear us?
That's what it was. iPad.
Is that better?
No, there's still a feedback.
Could you please turn down your volume in your speakers?
That's a good one.
I may need to go to Stacia's. I'll go to Stacia's computer.
Okay.
Sorry about that.
I think he's going to run over to her office.
Can you hear us okay now?
Yes. Woohoo.
Better.
Yeah.
All right, thank you for that. Thank you for that. And I also want to commend you too. I think you've done much better than I had to wait 6 hours for the West Lynn City Council meeting with the old commissioner. So I commend you. I'm under 4 hours for you guys. But so for the record, it's also my name is John George, and I serve on the Confederate Tribes of the Grand Round Tribal Council. So thank you for also for allowing us to testify on item 9C. That I would first like to share how important our council believes our government-to-government relationship is, and that we appreciate the strong ties we have built with the Oregon City and this commission. Oregon City is in our ceded lands. Lands were ceded in 1855 under the Willamette Valley Treaty. Not long after the signing of that treaty, our people were forcibly removed to the Grand Round Reservation. We have made tremendous investments in the purchase and cleaning up of the blue habitats here in Oregon City. So I'm also here tonight to share concerns on item 9. and a recommendation that the commission approve a contract with Wallace Engineering to create a memorial site. This is an item that directly impacts both our tribe's culture, history, and well as a historic investment we are making in Oregon City. Yet, we were not aware that this was a decision coming before the commission until today. We have concerns about the lack of transparency and consultation prior to bringing this contract to the commission for consideration. There has been no discussions about this project with our staff, aside from a brief mention with no follow-up or invitation to provide historical context. We would like to have the opportunity for consultation on this project. Furthermore, the tribe has previously raised serious concerns with mass design work with the Willamette Falls Trust, and we are disappointed to see that Oregon City staff is recommending they design this site. So we are requesting that prior to making a decision on this project tonight, that Oregon City honor our request to consult on this project. I would hope that it is something that the commission will consider, and I do appreciate your time this evening and to hear our concerns. Ayumasi to you all.
Thank you, Mr. George. I hope you know how much we value your input and your providing public comment tonight. Clearly, we're not making a decision on this tonight, so I'm sure staff is going to go back and take your comments into consideration, and we'll have some discussions about how we can respond appropriately. I know that I think there were several of us who likely had comments and questions about this, and so I'm not sure where it would have gone if we had the presentation and stuff, because we had our own reservations about it and concerns. And so, yeah, I appreciate you sticking around all of these many hours and providing that feedback, and I'm sure we'll be following up.
But thank you. We're very appreciative of that, and I do want you to know too how much we value our partnership with Oregon City and the Oregon City Commission here, as we know the great leaders that you are of your city also, and we value that in our relationship also.
All right. Thank you very much. All right. Commissioners, we have a hard stop at 11 p.m. My clock says it's 10:58. We have 2 communications items from the city manager. I trust that you've read those staff reports. And I believe several of us may have sent some emails to Mr. Conkle about the OC 2040 email that we received. I don't think we have time to talk about it right now. Mr. Conkle, do you have anything to add at this very short moment?
No, I don't have anything to add at this point.
So if you have any comments or concerns or want to talk about the email that we received regarding the Summit Series, and please reach out to Mr. Conkle and discuss that item or talk to him individually. We do not have any other communications. I was prepared to give an update on the housing bond with more information, but that will wait. Anything pressing, it will have to be super short. All right, seeing none, this meeting's adjourned.